The severed rope thuds to the ground, her execution abruptly halted. A smirking blue-haired man reveals himself as her savior, his glowing sword still humming from the strike. A preview hints at the destinies of a purple-haired man and two distinct white-haired women. In a painful memory, the white-haired girl is condemned as a traitor for attempting to kill the imperial family. Before the royal court, she's accused of trying to murder the crown prince and questioned about her mysterious power. Demanded to answer for her crimes, the white-haired girl gives a defiant smirk, deciding they wouldn't believe her anyway. Her silent laughter enrages her accusers, who are baffled by her lack of fear in the face of death. The green-haired king, seeing no remorse, sentences her to be hanged without burial. On the gallows before a roaring crowd, she thinks the spooky scene is scary, but still a relief. With the noose tight around her neck, she finds peace, believing her painful life is finally over. As she begins to suffocate, she begs for it to end quickly, hearing a faint promise of painless release. Her body struggles against the rope, while the cruel crowd chants for her to die soon. The blue-haired man grits his teeth in anguish, unable to watch the brutal execution. As her life fades, the girl's eyes widen in recognition at the sight of the man she knows as the Duke of Solea. She recalls the day the Duke was gravely injured by a monster, and her relief that he was okay. In a flash, the Duke of Solea's sword cuts the rope, severing her from her fate. He stands grimly on the gallows over her fallen body, the crowd murmuring in confusion. A voice from the crowd shouts his name in shock. Duke of Solea. The green-haired king roars from his throne, demanding to know why the Duke is disobeying a direct royal order. Lying on the wooden platform, the girl opens her eyes, confused by the sudden turn of events. The Duke of Solea looks down at her with a complicated expression, his thoughts trailing off. He coldly declares that he simply wanted to finish her execution quickly himself. In a flash of blue light, the Duke of Solea impales the white-haired girl with his sword. Smiling peacefully as blood trickles from her lips, she is consumed by blue flames. Thinking he was a good man, the Duke leans in, asking if she knew something about him. But her reply is lost in a massive eruption of blue fire that makes the crowd scream. As a vortex of fire engulfs them both, court officials yell for the king to escape the wicked witch's final trick. In his final moments, the Duke expresses a hidden wish, hoping she finds comfort in her death. Engulfed in a soothing blue light, the girl smiles serenely and expresses her gratitude. Floating in a peaceful void, she wonders what her life might become now. Her red eyes snap open in shock, finding herself a tearful young child once again. Disoriented, she recognizes her grim surroundings, questioning if she's in the basement. As her bare feet stand in a puddle, harsh voices demand to know where she's been, yelling that they're out of time. The girl looks up in fear, recognizing the angry matron from her orphanage, Mrs. Anna. She looks down at her own small hands, which seem to glow with a faint, magical aura. Slap! A hand strikes her across the head. Crying in terror, the girl realizes the horrifying truth. She has returned to a dark day in her past. When Mrs. Anna demands she open her arms to be cleaned, the girl looks up, telling her to check something first. Mrs. Anna freezes in shock, staring down and demanding to know what has happened. She holds her sparkling hands out to the astonished Mrs. Anna pleadingly. Mrs. Anna dismissively tells her to go clean up, and the girl obediently grabs a cloth. Peeking through a doorway, the girl recalls that she must continue on to a specific place. A sudden crash echoes, followed by a child's scream and someone questioning why Goran is crying. An angry voice blames the girl for the incident, ordering her to go get more water. Her small, bare feet quietly pad across the wooden floor. Slumped against the door, she sinks to the floor, accepting the reality that she has truly gone back in time. Now dressed in white, the young girl stands silently before the window of a carriage, being taken to an unknown destination. Huddled alone in a dark, grimy corner, the young white-haired girl trembles with despair. A vivid, traumatic memory of her own execution flashes before her eyes as she wonders if she must endure that horrible end again. Covering her mouth in terror, she steels her resolve, refusing to go through that painful death a second time. Clenching her dress, she sees this as an opportunity and decides her first step is to flee the orphanage. Peeking out from under a cloth, she prepares to make her move. With newfound determination, she prepares herself, thinking that she absolutely must succeed. As ominous purple hands reach for her, she realizes with dread that she has to run from him. A brief interlude showcases the key women whose destinies are woven into the unfolding story. In a flash of memory, she is revealed as Raffia Grenier, standing elegantly in a white dress. She recalls her lineage as the sole survivor of the Grenier clan, one of the few who can wield the power of word sorcery. The memory confirms her identity with a simple, declarative statement. That powerful sorceress was me. A vision of her older self, Raffia, stands serenely, her latent power hinted at by the light around her. She remembers that her unique power was always exploited by others, inevitably leading to tragedy and bloodshed. A happier memory surfaces of her white-haired ancestors peacefully building a village in the wilderness. The idyllic memory is violently splattered with blood as she recalls that their peace was tragically short-lived. She remembers a great disaster striking the forest, engulfing her clan's home in a raging inferno. As a child, she stood silently with other hooded clan members, watching their world burn. A hooded clan member looks at the unnatural blaze, lamenting that their clan's fate is sealed. A woman with white hair firmly comforts a crying young Raffia, trying to calm her. A woman argues with a masked elder, insisting they must at least save the child, Raffia, even if the rest of them perish. The woman whispers Raffia's name. Her decision made. Urged to hurry, Raffia is pushed through a crack in a cave wall by the woman and elder, who stay behind. In a final farewell, her mother tells her to hide the power that will someday awaken, calling her my dear child. Raffia emerges from the darkness, now alone in a vast forest under a blood-red sky. Wandering through the woods, she stops as a man suddenly appears before her. The man violently grabs her wrist, stopping her from fleeing. He leans in with a sinister, predatory grin, his eyes glowing with malice. The man and his thuggish companions decide to take only Raffia, leaving everyone else to burn to death. Realizing her mother has been abandoned, Raffia screams out in horrified grief. In tears, she watches the silhouette of her captor standing before the inferno that is consuming her home. As the men lead her away, one confirms their job is to leave the girl at the orphanage for a mysterious client. Raffia is brought before the orphanage heads, recalling how the institution exploited children by pocketing sponsorship funds meant for them. A bag overflows with glittering gold coins, symbolizing the immense wealth the orphanage owners stole. She remembers the children were a source of income, watched over by hired guards to prevent their escape. A painful memory surfaces of being captured and roughly restrained during a past escape attempt. Back in the present, huddled in a room, Raffia knows she has only one chance to escape this fate. She steels herself, knowing her only chance is today, when a mysterious hooded figure is set to arrive for her. Now cleaned and dressed in white, Raffia sits nervously on a couch, awaiting the arrival of her buyer. A tall, cloaked figure approaches, and Raffia looks up in alarm as he looms over her. The hooded man smiles down at her, offering a greeting as her red eye widens in shock. Holding a glowing crystal, the hooded man formally identifies her, Raffia Grenier. As the hooded figure gets into a carriage, the bald man from the orphanage warns Raffia to behave herself. The bald man places a hand on Raffia's shoulder, informing the hooded man he will now sign the contract. The bald man watches as the cloaked figure sits at a desk and signs the official papers for her. As the figure signs with a magically glowing pen, Raffia sees her moment, thinking, now's my chance. With a sudden burst of speed, she darts past the stunned bald man and a guard, making a desperate run for it. She makes a frantic dash through the courtyard, kicking over a wooden barrel as guards react in surprise. The barrel shatters, unleashing a torrent of red liquid that knocks Raffia back. The strange liquid ensnares the guards, who fall to the ground in agony as another chases after her. Gasping for breath, Raffia glances back at the chaos she caused before continuing her escape. Her desperate escape hits a dead end just as a voice shouts that she has been found. Finding a momentary hiding spot, Raffia stops to catch her breath in the darkness. The guards coldly discuss breaking her legs to prevent another escape, confident their sponsor would approve. Overhearing their cruel plan, a horrified Raffia resolves that she absolutely cannot be caught. As a guard screams for her to stop, a brilliant yellow power suddenly erupts from Raffia's body. Thwump! An unseen force sends the two guards flying, their faces masks of pure confusion. Finding themselves paralyzed, the guards scream at Raffia, demanding to know what she did to them. Tapping into her power, she issues a desperate, silent command for her pursuers to collapse. Her words take immediate effect, and both guards slump to the ground, rendered unconscious. The effort proves too much for her small body, and she collapses to her knees, coughing up blood. She realizes, with dawning horror, that she overdid it, her exhausted body now refusing to move. Lying helpless on the floor, she looks up to see the mysterious hooded figure appear in the doorway. The figure reveals himself as a young man with golden eyes, remarking on her interesting ability. His calm demeanor does nothing to soothe Rafia, who wonders in terror who this new person is. Kneeling before her, the blue-haired young man gently takes her hand and tells her not to be afraid. He looks at her with seemingly kind eyes, proclaiming that he is there to help her. His unexpected declaration of help brings a single, hopeful tear to Rafia's eye. Clutching his sleeve, she desperately begs him to take her to Solea and save her from that person. The scene shifts to a memory where the cloaked figure stands menacingly over a chained, red-haired man. The red-haired captive kneels, completely subdued by the glowing magical chains that bind him. A narrator identifies the bound man, introducing him as Rick Gunter. The cloaked figure leans in, giving Rafia a horrifying order to look into the man's eyes and command him to die. Rafia trembles in utter shock, frozen by the cruel and unthinkable command. As she forces out the man's name, Rick Gunter looks up, stammering in absolute terror. In a violent flash, the command takes hold, and the man's life is brutally extinguished. Rafia stares in drained horror at the body of the man she was just forced to kill. The cloaked figure erupts into a fit of manic laughter, thrilled she has finally used her power. Placing a hand on her shoulder, the figure ominously states that he'll be counting on her from now on. Back in the present, Rafia lies awake in a comfortable bed, her eyes wide with remembered horror. She looks up at an unfamiliar, ornate ceiling, completely disoriented and confused. Sitting up abruptly in the luxurious bed, she realizes she is no longer in the orphanage. The blue-haired young man smiles gently, reassuring her that this is the place she desperately asked for. A sweeping view reveals her new surroundings, the grand and beautiful estate of the Solea household. Rafia can only stare, completely stunned by the incredible revelation. The name echoes in her mind with shocked recognition. Solea. The young man stands confidently, a silhouette of his future self, the Duke looming behind him. Now, sitting across from her, he calmly notes her reaction, observing that she seems to recognize him. He invites her to chat, and a timid Rafia nervously agrees to his request. They take their seats at a small, elegant table, preparing for their conversation. Rafia stares with wide eyes at a tiered tray, laden with exquisite desserts. A gentle voice explains that she must be hungry after having slept for 3 straight days. Taking a bite of a pastry, her eyes light up with pure, unadulterated delight. She shyly thanks him for saving her, but the blue-haired young man coolly dismisses her gratitude. He observes her with a knowing and slightly calculating smile. Rafia sits tensely, trying to figure out how she could possibly explain everything she knows. She recalls her previous life, remembering that her benefactor, Yuri, was not one person, but a group of shadowy figures. A flashback reveals that this powerful group feared the ducal house of Solea and dared not move against them. The reason for their fear is made clear: the overwhelming and threatening power of Duke Sein Solea himself. Recalling his family's fearsome reputation, Rafia looks at him with desperate resolve. The blue-haired young man states his belief that she, in turn, can protect him. Thump. Overwhelmed by the moment, Rafia collapses to her knees. On the floor before a surprised Cassian, she makes a desperate, pleading request. With her head bowed, she gathers her courage and begins to ask him to take her. Looking up with wide, pleading eyes, she shouts for him to take her in. Cassian is completely taken aback by her sudden, desperate outburst. Crying, Rafia vows that if he takes her in, she will do absolutely anything he asks. Rafia stammers, admitting she is weak now, but begs him to just wait a little while. She declares with newfound conviction that in 3 years she will be able to do anything for him. Gazing out the window, her inner monologue reveals the grim nature of her promise. She can kill someone. Her expression hardens as she thinks about what she can offer him in exchange for her life. With glowing red eyes, she makes a chilling offer to kill anyone he hates. Remembering the man she was forced to execute, she vows to kill anyone for him, no matter who it is. As she finishes her vow, Cassian watches her with a cool, unreadable expression. Rafia clenches her small fist, sealing her dark promise. The young man calmly asks her how she would even accomplish such a feat. Rafia admits she can't do it yet, but insists that when the time comes, she can. He quietly appraises her, thinking to himself that he likes her boldness as she flinches slightly. Framed by roses, the blue-haired young man flashes a brilliant, charming smile. He kneels down to her level, closing the distance between them. Leaning closer, he smiles kindly, his gentle demeanor framed by delicate flowers. He takes her hands in his, softly beginning to speak. Her red eyes widen in utter shock at what he says next. Sein recoils with comical, exaggerated horror, shouting in disbelief. Stunned, Rafia covers her mouth, asking in disbelief if he really proposed she be his wife. He explains that since they are not of age, it will have to be an engagement for now. When Rafia points out she's not a noble, his eyes narrow with thoughtful intensity. Brushing aside her concern, he tells her he will handle the details and that she has only 2 answers to give. He lays out her stark choice. Will she marry him or not? He orders her to choose, coldly stating that for now, this is her only use, a word that horrifies her. Rafia steels her resolve, deciding to endure until she can awaken her power or protect someone named Naam. She remains bowed on the floor, having submitted to her new fate. Looking down at her, he remarks that he likes her straightforward answer. She flinches, startled, as he suddenly tells her to rest because she isn't well. Panicked that he'll change his mind, she quickly insists she's fine. He glances back at her, listening silently as she stammers her thanks for letting her rest. He firmly reassures her that he always keeps his word, so she has nothing to worry about. Turning his back, he tells her to be quiet and rest, leaving her to watch him go. Gazing at the magnificent chandelier, she marvels that she is now in the Solea estate. Lying in the luxurious bed, she reflects that her new life feels like an unbelievable dream. Now awake, she sits up and tentatively calls out to see if anyone is there. She calls out more urgently toward the large wooden doors of her room. A maid enters, looking surprised, as the young duke announces his entry and tells Rafia she can remain seated. The maid asks if she's hungry. After a moment of hesitation, Rafia shyly admits she is. The maid smiles warmly, encouraging her to get comfortable and eat well to grow strong. Beaming, the maid introduces herself as Margaret Circes, the head maid of the Solea estate. Margaret kindly offers a cart of food, asking Rafia to feel free to call her by her first name. Margaret kindly asks her to move her hands so she can serve the food, and a flustered Rafia quickly apologizes. Margaret presents a special corn soup, recommending that Rafia enjoy it with the accompanying white bread. With a spoon in her hand, a timid Rafia quietly thanks the head maid for the meal. She hesitantly brings the first spoonful of rich, warm soup to her lips. Her eyes light up with pure delight as she exclaims that the sweet corn and soft bread are delicious together. Margaret smiles warmly, asking if the meal suits her taste, to which Rafia gives a joyful yes. Margaret explains that it's a relief because she slept for 3 days, and the young master was very worried. The head maid reassures her that, although the young master can be blunt, he is not a scary person. As Margaret admits he's a little impatient, Rafia recalls his terrifyingly demanding marriage proposal. Margaret concludes that he is a good person, and softly asks Rafia to take care of him. A wave of warmth washes over Rafia, and she beams with a bright, genuine smile. The scene shifts to the red-haired man, Rick Gunter, offering to start an investigation for a pensive Sein. Rick reports to the young duke that the child avoids his gaze, and Sein notes she has never met his eyes either. Rick reminds Cassian that children trained as assassins never take their eyes off their prey. Recognizing his implication, Sir Rick Gunter bows and admits that he overstepped with his comment. Sein dismisses the concern, concluding that while she's hiding something, she means him no harm. Stating he was getting bored anyway, Sein decides to look into the mysterious child himself. He orders Rick to find a man named Josh to adjust his schedule, and Rick asks if there is another order. Sein adds an order to also bring a priest, shocking Rick, who warns it will attract the imperial family's attention. Leaning back in his chair, the young duke coolly declares that the risk doesn't matter. Resigned, Rick Gunter vows to bring a mid-rank or higher priest as discreetly as possible. His orders received, Rick departs, leaving the young duke alone in his grand study. While Rafia enjoys her meal, Sein muses that the more he thinks about it, the stranger she seems. Back in her room, Sein announces that a priest is coming tomorrow, sending a shocked Rafia into a panic. She realizes with horror that a priest might recognize her ability, and if her power is exposed, gripped by a traumatic memory of glowing chains, she desperately begs to see a doctor instead. She rushes toward a startled Sein, shouting that she doesn't want to meet the priest. Kasane watches her sudden, panicked outburst with a cool and calculating gaze. Finding her reaction troublesome, he recalls that the doctor found nothing wrong, which led to his decision. He wonders about her strong reaction, considering the possibility that she has bad memories of the temple or its priests. He recalls that the temple gathered orphans from all over under a cleric training policy, as if searching for someone. He connects her past, running from someone, to her strange request for him to wait 3 years. Recalling her bloody collapse, he reasons that if it was caused by divine power, the severe side effects would make sense. Realizing his mistake, he sighs and admits to himself that he was being short-sighted. He offers a doctor's examination instead, which a visibly relieved Raphia immediately accepts. He then tells her there is something they need to do first and instructs her to follow him. Raphia looks up at him with wide, questioning eyes, completely confused by his words. Following behind him, she tentatively addresses him as young master, still unsure of her status. Now in a sitting room, he stops and tells her they need to do something about that title first. He firmly states that she is not an employee of the ducal house and shouldn't use a servant's title. He instructs her that since he is the heir, addressing him as young duke will suffice, and she quietly agrees. With a tear in her eye, she timidly calls him young duke, which earns a pleased smile from him. With the formalities settled, he gets down to business, and she nervously agrees. He announces that they will now be drafting a formal sponsorship contract, much to her surprise. Raphia sits in stunned silence, her gaze lowered as she digests his official declaration. Looking up, she admits she doesn't know what he expects, as she has never lived the life of a noble. When she warns that he might end up disappointed, he coolly replies, "And so what?" Unfazed, he gestures to a formal document, resting on the table between them. He explains the document contains all the details of their sponsorship, including the safety she desires. He adds that it also covers the etiquette and knowledge required of her as his future wife. He clarifies that everything she chooses to learn and do will be for her own benefit. He firmly concludes that everything she acquires will become an asset solely for her. Overcome with emotion, Raphia tearfully thanks the young duke for his unexpected kindness. Raphia asks about the contract's duration. After some thought, she timidly suggests it last until she is no longer needed. A single, poignant question echoes in the darkness. Love? Kasane scoffs internally at the idea, thinking he'd rather live his life without knowing such a petty emotion. Cassian dismisses her suggestion, deciding the contract will last until she reaches adulthood, and then realizes he doesn't know her name. As he asks for her name and age, Raphia hesitantly introduces herself as Raphia, age 10. Kasane notes she is 4 years younger than him, then impatiently tells her to sign and asks for any other requests. Hesitantly, Raphia looks down at the contract and admits that she is unable to sign it. As he asks what, Raphia confesses with shame that she cannot write. She admits she can't read either, but eagerly promises to work hard and learn if he teaches her. He confirms her name is Raphia, and she shyly affirms it. With a flourish of his quill, Kasane begins to write on the document, startling Raphia. Leaning over her shoulder, he tells her to stay still and remember the shape of her name as he writes it, then asks if she has a surname. When she admits she doesn't have one, he decides to simply leave it out of the contract. He gently guides her hand over the signed document, a gesture that captivates her. The contract is now official, bearing the names Raphia and Kasane Solea. Holding the finished document, Raphia exclaims, "Wow, tilde!" in pure childlike wonder. A dark thought from Cassian calls her writing ugly, but Raphia gasps, having heard his inner voice, and asks him how. She quickly explains that her name's writing is ugly compared to his, which is elegant, relieving Kasane, who thought it was something serious. He gently pats her head, causing her to cry out, "Ah!" in surprise. He reassures her that she'll improve with practice, reminding her of her promise to work hard. He adds that once she learns, she'll develop her own style of handwriting, a new and exciting thought for Raphia. Raphia tentatively calls out to the young duke, and he turns to listen. Clutching the document, she looks up at him with a genuinely radiant smile. Kasane returns her joy with a soft, pleased smile of his own. As he turns to leave, he pats her head and tells her he's looking forward to her progress. He reminds her she is still a child compared to him, as a narrator reveals he is actually 19 years old. Kasane announces he needs to see Josh, a name Raphia doesn't recognize. He explains Josh is his aide and sighs, already dreading the nagging he's about to receive over the paperwork. Rafia worries if they can proceed without the Duke's permission, but Kassan curtly states it doesn't matter. He clarifies that this is a personal contract between the two of them, not the Solea Duchy. He looks at her intensely and declares that she belongs to him, leaving her to stare in stunned silence. As Rafia walks down a corridor, she overhears servants whispering that she's the child from the rumors. A sudden vision shows the servants as shadowy, masked figures, their gazes filled with malice. Rafia clenches her fist, thinking about the stairs and resolving to crush them. Kassan notices her distress and asks what she's talking about as she murmurs about being an outsider. He asks if she's okay as a sinister, thorny aura begins to envelop the trembling girl. Holding a contract, Cassian decides to leave, apologizing that he can't see her off properly. Elsewhere, Rick Gunter and another aide, Josh, stare at the contract in stunned silence. Josh anxiously wonders if Cassian pressured the child into signing, to which Rick grimly replies that he totally would. Kassan appears behind them, his face dark with annoyance at their gossiping. With a menacing glare, he threatens to stab them if they keep exchanging looks, making both aides sweat nervously. Now sitting, Rick complains Kassan isn't cute, while Josh teases him for still being a child, but Kassan tiredly shuts them down. Josh gets serious, stating that while he prepared the contract as ordered, he still has many concerns. Josh voices his doubt that a child can fulfill the required role, but Kassan simply replies, yes. Josh argues that a normal child would feel burdened by the duty, but Kassan challenges him for an alternative, which Josh notes would be costly. A sudden thought seems to flash through Cassian's mind, making him pause. Josh asks for clarification, and Kassan explains that since he needs a partner for high society, that role will go to Rafia. Rick Gunter suggests adopting Rafia into the ducal family, which Josh enthusiastically agrees would be a great move for their public image. Josh proposes a strategic marriage for her later, but Cassian internally rejects the idea, leaving Josh to wonder why not. Cassian bluntly states that if she becomes his sibling, he can't marry her, stunning his two aides. As Josh reels from the shock, Cassian declares he will marry Rafia when she comes of age and asks if there's a problem, to which Josh yells that there is a huge one. Josh frantically argues that marriage isn't a game, but Kassan calmly replies he's waiting until they're adults. When Josh protests that she's a commoner, Kassan dismissively retorts that handling her status is their problem. Rick interjects, calling Kassan harsh and reminding him that she's a runaway orphan whose identity is completely unknown. Kassan explains that her status as a runaway who belongs to no one is precisely why she's the perfect opportunity to solve all his problems at once. A satisfied smile spreads across Kassan's face, pleased with his own clever plan. With a sharp finality, Kassan dismisses his two despairing aides, declaring the conversation over. The scene shifts, showing a quiet, rain-streaked window in the ducal estate. Rafia stands alone before the large window, looking out into the rain. Kassan approaches from behind, gently draping a red shawl over her and telling her to stay warm. He calls out for Margaret, who appears with a warm, welcoming smile. As Rafia enjoys the sound of the rain, Margaret remarks that the capital gets more rain than snow. Rafia curiously asks what snow is, leaving a thoughtful Margaret to ponder her question. Margaret describes snow as white, fluffy, and cold, making a crunching sound underfoot, leaving Rafia to gasp, wow, in utter amazement. Rafia excitedly asks if she'll see snow one day, and Margaret promises she'll see plenty in the Solea territory. Margaret encourages her to stay healthy so she can play in the snow, and Rafia beams with a happy, okay. Margaret informs Rafia that she has to step out for a while to personally check on something. Hearing a knock-knock, Margaret announces that the attendants who will help with her bath have arrived. Margaret reassures a nervous Rafia that the new maids are good people, even if they seem unfamiliar at first. As Margaret departs, two new maids are seen waiting shyly in the open doorway. Two cheerful, identical maids with glasses and pigtails introduce themselves as Nep and Nettie. Rafia, looking timid and overwhelmed, quietly says hello in return. She overhears servants whispering about her and trembles, clenching her fists as she resolves to face their animosity. Rafia politely tells the twin maids that she can bathe herself, but they look at her in surprise. They passionately explain that they had to fight through a fierce competition just to get the honor of serving her. A stunned Rafia nervously clasps her hands, repeating, "A competition?" in disbelief. As the two maids kneel before her, a confused Rafia again questions them about the competition. One maid explains the competition to serve her was intense, though male attendants were disqualified, and they triumphantly won. The maid gushes that everyone was desperate to serve her because she is so precious, making it a true honor. Touched and confused, Raffia covers her mouth, admitting she thought everyone disliked her. She mentions hearing people call the situation crazy, which startles the twin maids. The maids frantically explain that crazy was meant as a high compliment for something impossibly amazing. Kneeling again, they insist that serving her is a genuine honor. Raffia realizes she misunderstood and hopefully wonders if the staff will talk to her if she greets them. Her eyes shine with tears of relief and newfound hope as a bright smile lights up her face. The maids beam, enthusiastically promising that everyone would welcome her with open arms. A still hesitant Raffia shyly asks if it's all right for them to help her with her bath now. An enthusiastic yes fills the air, surrounded by cheerful flowers. As one of the maids gently brushes her hair, she timidly addresses Raffia, who quietly replies. The maids eagerly ask for permission to also serve her breakfast the next morning. A beaming Raffia happily agrees, saying she would like that very much. The maids excitedly promise to get her anything she wants for breakfast, even if they have to pester the chef all night. Raffia admits she hasn't tried many foods and has no dislikes, believing anything would taste wonderful. While brushing her hair, a maid kindly promises that she will get to try all sorts of delicious foods. The maid tells her to eat and play to her heart's content, as Raffia quietly wonders if she'll ever get to go outside. The maids describe all the fun they'll have through the seasons, from spring flowers to winter snowball fights, and Raffia hopefully asks if they will play with her. The twin maids promise Raffia she'll never have to worry about food again, as being with her is their happiness. One maid excitedly suggests they go shopping for new clothes, causing Raffia to gasp in shock. Overwhelmed with joy at the thought of new clothes, Raffia beams with a radiant, tearful smile. The scene shifts to a dark, desolate space as Raffia wanders, desperately searching for something. Her eyes widen in shock as she spots her destination, identified as the Gate of Word Sorcery. Raffia now stands small and alone before a massive, ornate door. Peeking through a crack in the door, she thinks with terror that it shouldn't be open yet. With a look of dread, she wonders why the gate is already open. In a flashback, a mysterious hooded figure with a sinister aura asks their special child to lend their strength one last time. A hooded woman agrees, while a younger, hooded Raffia looks on with grim determination, thinking, this day. A man with green hair and a white ceremonial robe tells the two hooded figures that today's target is a man with the exact same appearance. A hand summons a monstrous dark entity, commanding it to tear a man apart and kill him. The hooded woman, holding the dark entity, hesitates and says they mustn't do that. An urgent voice demands the order be given, while an internal voice pleads not to say it. A man with white hair and red eyes screams at Raffia to order the kill, and she reluctantly commands the creature to attack the green-haired man. The hooded woman unleashes the dark magic from her hands. As the shadow creature flies from the door, a horrified Raffia watches from the opening. The creature morphs into a giant horrifying maw and lets out a terrifying scream. A voice cries out in terror, pleading for its life. As the creature attacks amid splatters of blood, a horrified Raffia begs it to stop while the victim writhes in agony. A golden eye, revealed to be Cassian's, watches the horrific scene unfolding from Raffia's room. Raffia cries out for it to stop as the nightmare vision of the monster intensifies. The vision shatters, leaving Raffia standing alone as the violent memory fades. Pulled from her trance, she hears a voice call her name and wonders who it is. An ethereal voice calls her name, Raffia. Near, as a hand gently cups her cheek, the voice names her Raffia Grenier, leaving her stunned. A shadowy hand suddenly grips her throat, choking her. An accusatory voice blames her for killing everyone, as Raffia denies it in terror. A dark, shadowy figure warns her that she will kill everyone again this time. As the phantom hand chokes her, a voice taunts that she'll ruin everything, but she vows she won't live that way again. Bolting upright in bed, Raffia screams her defiance, vowing to never live according to Yuri's will. The scene pulls back, showing a small, trembling Raffia alone in her vast, curtained bed. The scene transitions to a bright, sunny morning outside the ducal estate. A grand green and gold carriage waits in front of the stately white mansion. Margaret helps a cloaked Raffia towards the carriage as Sein is already stepping inside. Raffia, now wearing a simple gray cloak, looks on with wide, curious eyes. Cassian, seated in the carriage, asks if he's late and announces they can now leave. The carriage wheel begins to roll as their journey into town begins. Inside the carriage, Cassian, Margaret, and Raffia ride in a slightly awkward silence. Raffia tentatively gets Margaret's attention. Raffia quietly asks why the young duke is accompanying them, earning a slightly annoyed glance from Cassane. Cassane internally grumbles, realizing Margaret was right to question if he was just tagging along. In a flashback, Cassane tells a surprised Margaret he has to go to town anyway and will accompany them. A close-up reveals Cassane's fierce, determined gaze. A concerned Margaret asks the young duke why he's looking at her so intensely. Margaret asks why he can't let Raffia shop in peace, and as he feigns innocence, she prepares to lay down the law. Margaret sternly forbids Cassian from being bored, rushing Raffia, dismissing her choices, or sneaking away. A flustered Cassane insists she calm down, claiming he just has errands nearby. Margaret gives a sly, knowing smile, feigning belief in his excuse. Margaret teasingly apologizes for misunderstanding, making Cassane fume with irritation. His face buried in his arms, Cassian despairs over his image in the mansion, telling Margaret not to answer his rhetorical question. He runs a hand through his dark blue hair, sighing in frustration over the awkward situation. Margaret knowingly asks the young duke if his supposed business near the plaza is just an excuse, as Raffia listens. While Raffia beams, thinking she understands, Cassane internally fumes that Margaret is treating him like a nuisance. In town, Margaret notes that the New Year holiday means fewer people are out, which is good for them, prompting Raffia to ask about the holiday's significance. Margaret explains that the 10-day New Year period is an important time for citizens to rest and prepare with family. A delighted Raffia remarks that spending time with family sounds nice, and Margaret smiles in agreement. An ornate illustration shows hands lifting a sun emblem as Margaret mentions the New Year's festival. The explanation continues, showing how the imperial family gives food and nobles offer greetings to the royals. Margaret adds that this is why Cassane is in the capital, leading Raffia to conclude that she must be very lucky. Margaret corrects her gently, saying she and Raffia are the lucky ones to have met her ladyship. As they prepare to shop, Margaret asks what colors Raffia likes, and the girl pauses to think. Watching from afar, Cassian quietly thinks to himself that yellow is a nice color. A flustered Raffia admits she has no particular favorite, and Margaret acknowledges her reply. At the empty Madame Florence boutique, Margaret explains that noble families keep designers busy during the festival and rings a bell for service. A red-haired woman, Madame Florence, greets them warmly, but her smile vanishes as she sizes them up. The shop owner coldly states her dresses are expensive, doubting Margaret can afford them. Madame Florence gestures dismissively towards a different section of her shop. She condescendingly offers them a rack of outdated dresses, saying they are free to purchase those. A cruel, satisfied smirk spreads across Madame Florence's face. As Margaret starts to angrily defend them, Raffia calmly stops her, much to Margaret's confusion. Madame Florence smirks, mockingly complimenting the young lady's good eye for the outdated dresses. Margaret tries to leave, but Raffia insists on staying, worried about fleeing and tarnishing the family's name. A stressed Margaret resigns herself to buying something just to save face, even if they throw it away later. Raffia calmly tells the unimpressed shop owner that she needs something to wear and will just buy 1 or 2 dresses. Yawning with boredom, Madame Florence tells them to ring the bell when they're done, claiming to be busy. As she turns away, she's startled to find Cassane standing right there, who asks her why she's standing there like a fool. Cassane demands an explanation from the shop owner, who complains about flies and yells there's nothing for them, only to be cut off by his cold question. Cassane demands the owner explain herself, while she internally complains about being pestered by flies. The owner shouts that there are no dresses for them, but is silenced when Cassane icily asks what she just said. Madame Florence finally recognizes him, gasping in horror and asking why he is there. Standing protectively with Raffia, Cassane menacingly demands the shop owner repeat her words. His golden eyes burn with fury as he glares at the terrified woman. A sweating, stammering Madame Florence is too terrified to speak. Cassane questions if the prestige of the Solea family has fallen so low, causing the shop owner to panic and deny it. He gestures furiously at the cheap rack, demanding to know why his people are being directed to shabby rags. He sarcastically praises her as a top designer for looking down on the ducal house, and her face strains of color. Thump. Madame Florence collapses to her knees, begging for forgiveness and admitting she was rude. As she babbles that she didn't know who they were, Sein coldly notes her attitude depends on the customer. Sein places a hand on Rafia's shoulder, informing the groveling woman she's apologizing to the wrong person. The shop owner immediately turns to Rafia, desperately begging her forgiveness. Rafia looks up at Cassian, who gently asks if she's feeling pressured by the situation. Rafia admits she is, so Sein declares the apology over and announces it's time to settle things. He declares her punishment. He is buying every item in her boutique, including all reserved orders, leaving her utterly stunned. Sein coldly warns her that any damage to her reputation is her own problem, asking if she truly thought she could insult the Solea duchy and escape unharmed. The desperate shop owner protests that the reserved dresses won't even fit Rafia. Sein dismisses her concern and orders Margaret to prepare the dresses for transport, threatening to take them by force. Rafia stops him, asking what he'll do with all the dresses, and he replies that she will wear them. Rafia firmly refuses, stating she won't wear a single dress from such a place, shocking the shop owner. Seeing a glimmer of hope, the shop owner eagerly asks if Rafia truly doesn't want her dresses. Rafia states that there's a limit to kindness, declaring she won't let this slide and can do as she wishes with the dresses. After Sein asks what she's planning, she reveals her intent to take the adult dresses to the slums and the children's dresses to the orphanage. Looking angelic and joyful, Rafia announces her plan to donate them all. Madame Florence screams in protest that her dresses aren't for commoners, but Rafia, holding a heavy pouch, coldly tells her to be quiet. With a jingle, a large bag of gold coins spills onto the floor as Rafia declares payment made, stripping the owner of any right to interfere. As they walk away, Cassian remarks that donating the dresses sounds much better than her wearing them. Cassian calls out to the stunned Madame Florence, who looks up in fear as she addresses him as the young duke. He looms over her, coldly stating that he was the one insulted today and warning that the child should never be mentioned again. With a menacing glare and a shadowy panther at his back, he asks if she understands what will happen if she takes his warning lightly. Leaving the terrified woman on the floor, Sein tells Rafia it's time to go, and she readily agrees. Hick! Alone and defeated, Madame Florence collapses in a heap on the boutique floor. Outside, Margaret praises Rafia for handling the situation with dignity, but Rafia worries she might have overstepped. Rafia admits that, while she appreciated his gift, she felt conflicted. She confesses she did not want to wear the dresses, but could not bear to waste them, and Cassian gently tells her she did well. A surprised Rafia looks up at him, taken aback by his praise. Cassian smiles, telling her it was a decision he liked very much, as he gently pats her head. He continues to comfort her, telling her to remember this moment well. Adjusting her hood, he tells her that what matters to her shouldn't be worthless rags. He holds her close, telling her that what should matter is him, and her eyes widen as she looks up at him. A blushing Rafia enthusiastically agrees, while Cassian gives a small, satisfied smile. The scene shifts to a close-up of Rafia in a lovely, new frilled pink dress. She fidgets with the ribbons, shyly explaining that she put the dress on because he told her to. Rafia asks if wearing the dress is really okay, looking toward Cassian and a concerned Margaret. She stands nervously, presenting herself in the full pink and white ruffled dress. Margaret exclaims that it suits her well, while Cassian coolly agrees that it's not bad. Cassian comments that the dress looks good on her, but then asks a pointed question, flustering Margaret. He asks why she didn't want decorations, and she deflects while he questions her reasoning for thinking they'd be expensive. Rafia nervously explains that because of her, he already spent a lot, and she can't keep draining the ducal house's wealth. Clasping her hands together, she earnestly vows to repay this debt later. Cassian interrupts from his seat, asking why she always considers his gestures a debt, which surprises her. As Rafia stares in shock, he explains that it is a gift from his heart, a sentiment he gives to his people. He smiles warmly, asking if she's surely not going to reject his feelings. Rafia stammers her thanks as Cassian gestures to a red coat, asking what she thinks of it. Her eyes sparkling with excitement, Rafia requests ribbons and black-dyed rabbit fur for the new coat. Cassian relays her order to the shopkeeper, confirming the dress and coat she'll wear now can be prepared immediately. A smiling shopkeeper informs him the rest of the items will be delivered to the Solea mansion tomorrow morning. Twirling in her new red coat, Rafia declares it the prettiest dress she's ever worn, as Kasain expresses his approval for the shop's efficiency. While Margaret gushes over how cute she looks, Cassian thoughtfully notes that something seems to be missing. He correctly guesses she planned to cover her face with her old robe and forbids it, making Rafia wonder how he knew. Kasain gently ties the ribbons of a new matching red bonnet for her. He smiles, announcing that he's all done. A blushing Rafia thinks to herself how cute he is. Margaret offers to retie the ribbon into a pretty butterfly, pointing out Rafia isn't good with her hands, causing Rafia to panic. Rafia quickly makes an excuse, insisting a tight knot is better to keep the bonnet from flying off in the wind. She convinces herself that it's much better to keep the bonnet tied tightly, just as it is. Margaret watches on with a knowing and gentle smile. The scene transitions outside, showing sunlight on a cobblestone path and green leaves. As a green carriage passes, a voice from off-screen calls out to the young Duke to ask him something. Rafia asks Cassian if she can whisper her question, and he leans in, telling her to ask him. As Rafia begins to whisper her question, she hesitates for a moment. Inside the carriage, she leans close to Kasain and quietly asks if anyone has come looking for her. Kasain's expression grows serious as he asks if they know she's staying at House Solea. Panicked, Rafia explains that she ran away and doesn't want to cause any more trouble for the young Duke. Cassian reveals he has been watching over her for days, which surprises her as she realizes he was already aware of her worries. Looking out the window, Kasain gently chides her for worrying way too much. He playfully pinches her nose, telling her to clear her mind a bit. He reassures her that Solea's security is tight and that worrying about it is a waste of emotion. Remembering a sad, cloaked figure from her past, Rafia is startled when Kasain declares her past doesn't matter, because she is his person now. Cassian looks at her with determination, promising to protect her so she doesn't have to worry. His expression softens as he tells her it's time to go inside. Clatter. As Cassian helps a surprised Rafia out of the carriage, she looks at him with a curious glance. Two maids, Neff and Nettie, greet Rafia with excitement, gushing over her cute outfit and telling her they've been waiting for her return. The smiling maid announces they prepared a surprise for Rafia while she was out. She presents a wrapped gift box, and Rafia timidly asks what it is. Rafia opens the box to discover a red, hardbound book inside. Urged to take a look, Rafia opens the book with a gasp of surprise. The maids proudly explain that they had so much fun drawing pictures of recipes that they stayed up all night creating a cookbook for her. Rafia is moved to see that Neff and Nettie drew themselves in the book as well, as the maids express their hope that it will be helpful. The book contains adorable illustrations detailing Neff's love for sweet and salty flavors and Nettie's preference for savory ones. The maids explain their system. A smiling drawing means the food tastes just right. A blushing Rafia expresses her sincere gratitude while Kasain and Margaret watch on with warm smiles. Overjoyed, Rafia hugs the book close and declares that it will be her new treasure. The scene shifts to a dark, grassy field where two cloaked figures, Kasain and another man, agree that the area is suspiciously quiet. Kasain observes that there's not even a rat in sight. Ugh. He suddenly recoils, grimacing as he asks about a foul smell in the air. The other man grimly identifies the stench as that of rotting corpses, their gaze fixed on an ominous mansion in the distance. Kasain stands with his sword drawn, which begins to pulse with swirling dark purple energy. His golden eye reflects the chaotic black and purple aura, coiling around his blade. He unleashes a powerful wave of dark energy, striking an unseen target. The energy splinters a wooden trading post. Surveying the destruction, Kasain notes with frustration that his sword energy is messy and impure. He attempts to focus his power again, but the energy around his sword remains unstable. Crack! The sword shatters in his hand as he laments that it broke again. A red-haired man named Rick appears, calling him Swordmaster, but Cassian curtly tells him not to use that title. Rick informs Cassian that Sir Josh is looking for him, making Cassian worry that news of his broken sword has already spread. Phew! Back in his study, Kasain receives the New Year's festival invitation with a sigh of relief. Rick questions why he won't open the obvious invitation, then insists Kasain come with him as they have something to discuss. Later, Rick notes with surprise that the invitation is still sealed, and Kasain begins to explain what he's been thinking. In a drawing room with a blonde aide, Cassian is cut off by Rick, who asks if he's being taken lightly, prompting the aide to tell Rick to speak his mind. Cassian finally announces that he doesn't want to attend the festival, leaving the blonde aide stunned. The panicked aide argues that it's a decision, not just a thought, but Cassian, annoyed, tells him to sit down and orders preparations to leave for the territory. Muttering, "Unfair," the blonde aide meekly suggests he should at least attend the first day of the festival. The aide passionately pleads with Cassian, warning him that skipping the festival will anger the Emperor, and begging him to attend just the first day. Cassian explains his reason as Raphia, revealing that she is still anxious and worried about being sent back to the orphanage. Rick suggests letting her stay at the mansion, but Cassian angrily rejects the idea, comparing it to locking a bird in a cage and questioning if she's an animal. Rick quickly apologizes, and Cassian dismisses it, ordering them to simply follow his instructions. Cassian's gloved hand tightens on the armrest as he states that the orphanage is becoming an irritation. Sitting alone in the dark, Cassian coldly contemplates a dark solution, wiping out the orphanage entirely. The blonde aide pleads with his lord, insisting this is not the right way to handle the situation. Rick opposes destroying the orphanage, bluntly telling Cassian he's the most difficult person in the Empire. The blonde aide warns that the Imperial family is likely watching the orphanage and might use Cassian's involvement as an excuse to target him. Cassian expresses his frustration that both of his aides are opposing him, surprising them. Rick admits their opposition is bothering Cassian and suggests a compromise, not destroying the orphanage, but just giving them a slight warning. A smiling Cassian agrees that a slight warning sounds good. Ha. The blonde aide sighs in exasperation but relents, ordering them to at least ensure no one finds out. Meanwhile, Raphia sleeps peacefully, thinking to herself that this is all so much trouble. A voice reassures her, promising she can do what she wants and that he'll handle anyone she wishes to avoid. As Raphia sleeps, Cassian watches over her with a gentle, protective gaze. The scene shifts to a large, dark building at night as Cassian announces they've arrived. Ugh, Cassian, now cloaked and masked, recoils from a terrible smell and asks what it is. Inside, he and a cloaked Rick venture deeper, noting the foul stench only gets worse. They stop in shock, looking down at a horrific scene of slaughter, as Cassian wonders what kind of madman did this. A gruesome, blood-soaked scene reveals the extent of the massacre inside the building. Tisk, Cassian, and Rick look on in disgust and anger at the brutal scene. Overwhelmed by the sight, a cloaked Cassian curses the situation. Rick reports to the young Duke that the massacre isn't confined to just one room. Cassian leaps over a body, determined to check the entire building. Horrified by the sight of the slain children, Cassian unleashes a blast of energy, screaming, "Damn it!" Standing amid the carnage, Cassian recalls Raphia saying there were fewer than 10 children here. As they ascend a staircase, Cassian mentions something is bothering him, and Rick asks what it is. Cassian realizes he smells something besides blood and has a flash of insight. He looks up towards a closed door, from which an ominous orange glow emanates. Rick urgently shouts for the young Duke to leave immediately, but Cassian firmly states that he knows. Cassian and Rick flee as a fiery explosion engulfs the building behind them. The orphanage erupts in a massive fiery blast. Back in the drawing room, the blonde aide is surprised by their early return and asks if Cassian changed his mind. Seeing their grim expressions, the aide asks Cassian and Rick why they look so troubled. Cassian reports that everyone at the orphanage was already dead when they arrived, and now the place is burning. Seeing a vision of a burning lantern, the aide concludes the fire was deliberately set in the basement on a timer. The aide theorizes the attack was a warning, since the perpetrators don't know who took Raphia, prompting Cassian to ask for clarification. A threatening message is conveyed: hand over the kid quietly, or you will end up dead. Cassian realizes the attack's timing was perfect to send him a message, regardless of whether he visited or not. The aide suggests the orphanage had it coming, but Cassian draws his sword to his throat, silencing him. Cassian dismisses the idea, stating that if it were simple revenge, it would have happened long ago. He explains the killings were too professional, with fatal wounds to the heart or throat, as the aide asks Rick for his opinion. The aide reasons that if the attackers knew where Raphia was, they'd have come for her directly, and Cassian grimly agrees the target is the kid. A vision of Raphia glowing with golden energy appears as a voice questions her power, and she thinks that she can't explain it. Cassian decides they can't stay in the capital, as he realizes that person has completely erased their attempt to buy the child. The narration concludes that their enemy is cunning, terrifying, and extremely careful to hide any link to the child. On a balcony with a large hawk, Kasane declares they must accelerate their plans. He addresses the hawk as Peppo, entrusting it with a mission. Cassian announces a visit to the palace, telling his men to be ready to leave upon his return. The scene transitions inside the lavish palace, focusing on a grand chandelier. Kasane kneels respectfully before a man in a red robe, sitting on a bed. The man on the bed looks down at Kasane with a calm, authoritative expression. Russell. The man calls out to Kasane, and Kasane looks up from his formal uniform. A blond man speculates that Cassian's urgent visit must be serious, though Cassian silently questions the man's identity. The man then states he merely wished to be the first to offer New Year's greetings. The man mentions they will see each other at the festival anyway and offers Kasane a gift. The man on the bed stares in shock at the gift, exclaiming, "This!" He asks Cassian how he obtained such a rare snow leopard pelt, noting that they are forbidden to hunt. Kasane explains he found one dead from natural causes and another frozen, prompting the man to ask why he didn't keep it for himself. With a bit of flattery, Cassian says the most valuable things belong to His Majesty. The man smiles, commenting on his improved silver tongue. The man remarks that Khan is nothing like his father, before getting to the point and asking what he wants. Kasane reveals that his father's illness has worsened, forcing him to miss the festival and return to his territory immediately. The man muses that Jose Solea is ill, remarking that not even he can escape old age. He laments Cassian's swift departure and asks if he has met Noah and Dermot yet. The man mentions that the princes adore Cassian, who respectfully promises to pay his respects to them later. Convinced of the urgency, the man grants Cassian leave and asks him to send his regards to Jose. Kasane formally expresses his gratitude for the Emperor's boundless grace. As the scene shifts to a bright sky, a voice sadly remarks on their sudden departure. The scene transitions to the grand ducal mansion, where a small, fluffy creature peeks out from the bottom corner. Kasane tells Neff and Nettie to take care of themselves, while a tearful Raffia thanks the maids for their kindness. The maids, also crying, bid farewell to "my lady," hoping they can meet again someday. Kasane watches Raffia's tearful goodbye to the maids and says nothing. He offers to let Raffia take the maids with her, and she lights up with excitement, asking if she truly can. Kasane explains it would be good for her to have familiar faces at the estate and instructs the maids to join the next group. Neff and Nettie are ecstatic, considering it the highest honor to work at the main Solea estate. They promise to see her soon, and an overjoyed Raffia agrees to wait for them. Margaret confirms to Cassian that the advance party is ready, and he warns her to ensure the servants remain discreet. He gives a stern, final reminder. He came alone, and he is leaving alone. Margaret smiles warmly, reassuring him that the long-serving staff of the duchy can be trusted. Margaret notes Raffia's popularity as the girl leans out of a carriage, calling for the head chef. Raffia praises the chef's delicious food and asks for more upon her return, moving him to tears with her kindness. Overcome with emotion, the chef begs to be transferred to the main estate, but Kasane coolly tells the butler to just give him time off. As Raffia watches, Kasane decides it's time to properly introduce her to his aides. A kind-faced young man with light brown hair is introduced as Sir Josh Reinhardt. Kasane explains Josh is his aide, treasurer, and secretary. Josh greets Raffia warmly, while she thinks he looks tired and introduces herself. Kasane looks around, wondering where his other aide, the vice commander, has gone. A voice calls out, "Young Duke," and both Cassian and Raffia turn toward the sound. Rick appears, and Cassian realizes he was checking the luggage. Kasane introduces Rick as his aide, the vice commander of the Knights, and someone he considers an older brother. Raffia stares in shock, repeating the words, like, "an older brother?" in her mind. Kasane reveals his full name, Rick Gunther Randa, as a menacing image of Rick's grinning face flashes. A horrific vision plays out. A hooded figure commands someone to look into his eyes and say, "Die," causing a man to collapse in terror. Raffia recoils in fear, a single tear falling as she wonders what she has just done. Kasane notices her distress and calls out to her, but she seems to be in a daze, prompting him to wonder what she did to them. Rick stands impassively as the narration echoes Kasane's words about him being a cherished aide and like a brother. Raffia clutches her head, realizing with a burst of red power that she used her ability, and begins to apologize. Her apology comes out as a weak, tearful whisper. Surrounded by a vision of dark, thorny vines, Raffia cries and says, "I'm sorry." She runs to Cassian and buries her face in his coat, begging for forgiveness as Rick watches. Another dark vision shows two cloaked figures collapsed by the carriage, their forms fading as they beg for forgiveness. Rafia sobs uncontrollably, insisting she didn't mean to do it and didn't know what was happening. Holding her close, Cassian asks what's wrong as she continues to apologize over and over. He looks down with concern, wondering who in the world she is apologizing to. Cassian urgently calls out to Rick, telling him to turn around, but Rick seems confused. As Cassian yells, "Hurry!" Rick's expression shifts to one of dawning concern. "Grab." Rick turns just in time for Cassian to call out to the trembling Rafia. Cassian gently tells the trembling Rafia to look at him as she repeatedly whispers that she's sorry. Grabbing her shoulders, he yells for her to look at him, and she tearfully meets his gaze. Cassian softens his tone, telling her to calm down and breathe with him, and she stammers his title. He guides her to inhale and then exhale, and she shakily follows his lead. Cassian holds her gently. Their gazes locked as she begins to calm down. Now composed, Rapafia apologizes, explaining she was just very shocked. Cassian remains silent, his intense gaze fixed on her. He gently pats her head and suggests going to her room, but she quickly refuses, saying she can rest in the carriage. As he tries to insist, Rafia cuts him off, urging they leave immediately so she doesn't take up more of his time. Cassian looks on in conflicted silence while Rafia brightly insists that she's really okay. Elsewhere, Josh hesitantly calls out to Sir Rick, who stands with a stern expression. Rick asks Sir Josh if he really looks that menacing, leaving Josh flustered and speechless. After Josh's silence, Rick dryly comments that compared to him, Josh is the menacing one. Rick asks if his face is so terrifying it would make someone cry, and Josh agrees it's possible. Cassian interrupts, demanding to know why they haven't left yet. Inside the moving carriage, a brown-haired maid looks on with concern, sighing, "Oh dear." The maid notes it's about to snow, which will be hard for the knights, prompting Rafia to ask why, since snow is soft and fluffy. The maid explains that snow freezes the roads, making them slippery and dangerous, which makes Rafia understand. As the maid adds that the weather will get colder, Rafia beams, hoping it doesn't snow until they arrive. A sudden chill runs through Rafia, who wonders what she just felt, as the maid asks if she is cold. Rafia denies being cold, thinking to herself that something felt strange for a moment. Rafia insists she's actually hot and will turn into a ball if she wears another layer, much to the maid's surprise. Concerned, the maid leans in and asks Rafia if she's feeling unwell. Looking queasy, Rafia weakly insists she's fine, while the maid wishes she could have gotten herbs for motion sickness. Rafia explains they couldn't waste time, recalling Cassian's urgent departure. Riding alongside the carriage, Cassian announces they'll arrive early, as the dark clouds have cleared. Cassian checks on Rafia, asking if she feels unwell again, and she weakly admits she does a little. He turns and offers her something to help. Rafia gratefully accepts the small pouch he gives her. Oh. She opens it to discover a shiny red pomegranate. Gasping in delight, she asks if he got it for her, but Cassian brushes it off, saying he just happened to see it. Rafia asks if he isn't cold, and suggests he ride in the carriage, but he says he prefers horseback, as sitting still makes him restless. She thanks him for the pomegranate, and he tells her it's fine, but not to force herself to eat it. With a gentle smile, Cassian tells her to close the window because it's cold, and she happily agrees. Rafia peeks out the window, watching him quietly. A slight smile touches Cassian's lips as he thinks it would be nice if they could ride together. As their grand escort travels, Rick remarks on how peaceful their journey has been, and Cassian agrees they must remain on guard. Cassian declares they will stay vigilant, as their enemies might just be waiting for the right moment to strike. Upon arriving, Cassian helps a groggy Rafia from the carriage, who is surprised to see the young duke. Rafia apologizes again, prompting Cassian to remark that she apologizes for everything, leaving her confused. Her confusion turns to awe as she gets her first look at the massive, beautiful estate. Standing before the magnificent Solea estate under a magical sky, Cassian formally welcomes the kid home. An older butler, Anton, welcomes the young duke, who is glad it didn't snow, while the staff wishes them a Happy New Year. Cassian returns the New Year's greeting to Anton as Rafia suddenly realizes she hasn't greeted the duke yet. The maid informs Rafia of a planned gathering, but after she decides to greet him later, Cassian states they will keep this year simple, confusing her. Rafia asks her maid what the difference is between the New Year's festival and a New Year's gathering. The maid explains the festival is an imperial event, while the gathering is a much smaller affair hosted by the Duke. Learning it's a day for the Duke to receive greetings from vassals, Raffia realizes he must be exhausted and gets no rest. Anton, the head butler, turns his attention to Raffia, noting the Duke has brought an adorable young lady. He introduces himself with a bow as Anton Morris, the head butler of the Solea ducal house. Anton kindly invites her to call him by his first name, and a flustered Raffia stammers out her own name. Anton wishes Lady Raffia a happy new year, and she enthusiastically returns the greeting while Kasain looks on. Kasain asks Anton if the kid's room is ready, and the butler confirms it is. Meanwhile, Raffia resolves to greet the young Duke properly later. Kasain decides to go see the room, prompting Anton to ask if the young Duke will be accompanying her. With a menacing glare, Kasain asks if there's a problem, and a nervous Anton quickly assures him there isn't one. Anton quickly offers to escort them right away. In a soft, petal-filled moment, Raffia looks up admiringly at Kasain. Presenting a lavish, sun-drenched room, Kasain explains he chose the one that gets the most sunlight. Raffia gasps, "Wow!" but Cassian casually asks if the room is too small for her. Shocked by his question, Raffia asks if he thinks it's small, and he confirms that's how it looks to him. Raffia passionately declares the room isn't small, she is, imagining 100 of herself could fit inside. Baffled, Cassian asks what she is saying, thinking to himself that 100 Raffias would be too much. He tells her to use the room well if she likes it, and she lights up with joy. Raffia spins with glee, exclaiming that the room is cool, pretty, and that she absolutely loves it. A small smile touches Cassian's lips as he admits he didn't expect her to like it this much. Cassian compliments Anton on a job well done, and the butler thanks him. Kasain tells Raffia to rest until the evening, and the maid suggests she greet his grace then, to which Raffia agrees. The maid excuses herself to unpack, and Raffia tells her to take her time, left alone in the vast room. Alone, Raffia is struck with a sudden fear, wondering what will happen if the Duke doesn't like her. Recalling Margaret's words, Raffia walks down a grand hall behind a purple-haired young man. Her thoughts continue as she excitedly concludes that the Duke must be just as handsome as his son. Flustered, Kasain whirls around, asking what she just said and stammering that she's really something else. Opening a grand set of doors, Kasain invites her to come in. Raffia gasps, staring up at the imposing, dark-haired Duke sitting on a grand chair. With a clumsy curtsy, Raffia loudly introduces herself. The Duke coldly remarks that she clearly hasn't learned proper etiquette, causing her to bow her head in shame. The scene is set in a grand office, with the Duke and Kasain on one side of a table and Raffia on the other. The Duke questions her choice of seat, and a nervous Raffia wonders if she made a mistake. Pointing out there were 5 available seats, the Duke presses Raffia on why she chose that specific one. Raffia explains she wanted to sit closer for her first greeting, prompting the Duke to ask if she isn't afraid of him. Beaming, Raffia confidently admits she's a little nervous, but not scared. She explains that since the young Duke is a good person, she believes the Duke, who looks so much like him, must also be amazing. An attendant announces that tea has arrived, and the Duke permits them to bring it in. The Duke notes she is 4 years younger than Cassian but looks smaller than expected, and Raffia promises to grow taller. Taking a sip of tea, the Duke coolly states that she will likely remain small no matter how hard she works. Suddenly, the maid loses her balance, sending the tea tray tumbling through the air as she gasps in horror. The Duke watches the impending disaster with a cool, detached expression. Raffia instinctively reaches out, shouting a desperate number. In a flash, Raffia moves to shield the falling maid. With a burst of light, Raffia stands protectively in front of the maid as the tea is about to hit. Kasain stares in wide-eyed shock at the unfolding scene. The Duke grabs Raffia's wrist, calling her a fool and demanding to know what she is doing as she yelps. Raffia's hand glows as she cries out that it's hot, with red liquid splattering around her. The Duke pulls her close, urgently asking if she's all right, as she stammers his title in shock. Believing she ruined everything, Raffia begins to apologize, but the Duke, confused, asks why she screamed that it was hot. Holding her securely, the Duke anxiously asks where she got burned. Raffia insists she's fine and turns his attention elsewhere, leaving him to wonder what's more important. The brown-haired maid quickly explains to the Duke that her wrist has been aching and she lost her grip. Bowing low, the maid offers her sincerest apologies to His Grace for her mistake. The maid then apologizes to Raffia, whose eyes are fixed on the maid's trembling, overworked hands. The Duke dismisses the burn as not serious, but Rafia insists she's fine and tells him not to worry, while Sein remains silent. A bald doctor with glasses nervously announces that he was called for. With grim expressions, the Duke and Sein watch as the Duke orders the doctor to examine the injury. The doctor inspects Rafia's bandaged hand, assuring them the burn is minor, on the back of her hand, and won't leave a scar. The Duke menacingly asks if that's true, threatening the doctor's life if it's not. The terrified doctor swears to do his best, while mentally cursing the ducal family. Shaking, the patched-up doctor leaves the grand room, while Rafia watches from her seat. Rafia expresses relief that the Duke wasn't hurt, but he sternly tells her never to step forward to save someone again, leaving her confused. The Duke explains that as an 11-year-old child, she is meant to be protected, not to be the protector, and must not throw herself into danger. Sein quietly agrees, adding that a child's body is too small and fragile. The Duke asks what would have happened if she were seriously hurt, prompting a tearful Rafia to apologize for worrying him. She clenches her fist, then brightly adds a heartfelt thank you for their concern. Rafia beams with a radiant, joyful smile, surrounded by a floral aura. A faint smile touches the Duke's lips as he appreciates her words and tells her to go upstairs to rest. Sein holds open the large, ornate doors for Rafia to exit. As they step into the hallway, a worried Rafia looks up at Sein. Sein whirls around and angrily forbids her from ever hurting herself so recklessly again. He demands to know what she would have done if she'd been seriously injured. She tearfully apologizes, thinking this minor burn is nothing. A flashback shows a bloodied Rafia, recalling that in the past, every time she used a word spell, she paid a harsh price. Cassian intensely declares that she is his person now, and must care for her body as if it were his own. Rafia gives a disarmingly sweet smile, and promises not to do it again, leaving Sein flustered. Composing himself, Sein tells her to go upstairs, as he needs to discuss something with his grace. Rafia happily agrees to go up first, and Sein gently reminds her to be careful not to trip. Sein watches her walk away with a fond, gentle smile. His expression turns serious as he turns back toward the Duke's office. The Duke admits the little snow rabbit was cute, but when Sein asks why he didn't say so, he calls it too embarrassing. The Duke then asks if Sein intends to marry her. Cassian calmly states that he has to get married eventually anyway. The Duke argues that for a stable succession, her status should be low, but as an orphaned commoner, she can't be a legitimate spouse. Cassian reveals he already sent his plan via Peppo. The Duke, annoyed by his son's shamelessness, looks on as a massive eagle perches nearby. Sein cheekily remarks that everyone says he takes after the Duke, who dryly retorts that it sounds like an insult, and for once, they agree. As the Duke sighs in resignation, Sein observes with a smirk that his father never backs down in an argument. A dark, thorny view of the estate appears as the narration explains that due to an unusually warm winter, corpses must be decaying. Sein confidently confirms that the decomposition must have started because it's warmer than in previous years. The Duke expresses doubt, asking Sein if he truly thinks things will go as he expects. The scene transitions with a foreboding red and black panel. A flashback begins, revealing a corpse was discovered in Solea belonging to the Estelanta family, one of the Duke's vassals. The narration explains the Count was poisoned, causing him to lose his mind. In his poisoned state, he committed a horrific atrocity against his own wife and mother. Upon regaining his senses, the Count took his own life in despair. His weak daughter died from neglect, leaving the Duke concerned the news would reach the royal family, since Count successions require imperial decree. With the Estelanta family wiped out, the Emperor would undoubtedly install a loyal ally to fill the vacant Count title. A recap of history explains that the Solea ducal family, a branch of the royals with succession rights, are not allies of the current imperial family. Their relationship soured around the time the current Duke, Jose, was married. Uninterested in the imperial power struggle, he chose the northern region as his domain. However, an imperial ally in Solea would inevitably drag him back into the political conflict. As a result, the utter annihilation of the Estelanta Count's family was kept a secret. Sein cheerfully lays out his plan. Install Rafia as the Estelanta heir to avoid future troubles, calling the rare opportunity perfect. The Duke points out the catastrophic risk if their plan to use the legitimate daughter inheritance law gets exposed. Cassane suggests they adopt Raffia into Baroness Margaret Cersis's family for safety, since she holds a singular noble title. Cassane earnestly reminds the Duke that a count's title is at stake. He argues the benefits of the heir swap outweigh the risks, as the family's prior ostracization makes exposure unlikely. The flashback narration reveals the true story. The Count was an addict. His daughter, meanwhile, was so frail she was a complete recluse. Back in the present, the Duke skeptically asks Cassane if he truly believes that child can bear the responsibilities of a count. Cassian confidently asserts she is more than capable, admitting his own initial doubts, but now recognizing her natural talent for winning people over. A memory of Raffia's joyful smile flashes as Cassane praises her work ethic, convinced she will excel at any task. Cassane respectfully states that the final decision rests with his father, the Duke. The Duke gives his consent, and Cassane bows, stating he will personally inform Raffia. After Cassane departs, the Duke leans back in his chair with a weary sigh. The empty office reflects the weight of the Duke's decision. In another room, a man with light brown hair weeps with joy, amazed that he finished his work in just half a day. Moments later, the same man is passed out on his desk, lamenting that he hasn't even recovered from his travels and was already given another task. With a knock, Cassian stands outside a door, noting with amusement that for someone who complains so much, he sure finishes his work quickly. Finding the door unlocked, Cassian wonders if Raffia is out and pushes it open with a clatter. A delighted Raffia throws the door open, happily greeting the young master. Startled, Cassian asks why she's opening the door, and she cheerfully explains she just wanted to open it for him. Cassane sits down with Raffia and Margaret, telling them to sit as Margaret needs to hear the news as well. He observes Raffia and Margaret, who both stare back at him with complete and utter confusion. Cassane drops the bombshell announcement. As of today, Raffia is the Estelanta Count's daughter, leaving both her and Margaret stunned. He explains she will inherit the title and territory, but will be known as the Count's daughter for a few years until she comes of age. Cassane reassures them that all the paperwork will be handled. Margaret looks relieved, while Raffia remains in a state of shock. Raffia realizes this is how they're solving the issue of a commoner marrying a noble, as Cassane internally resolves to do his best. Cassian formally informs Raffia that she will now begin a thorough education. The plan unfolds. Margaret will teach her basic letters, while a cheerful blonde man named Josh will handle economics and history. The curriculum also includes social dancing, piano, and top-tier tutors for conversation skills. Margaret outlines the tight schedule, asking a worried Raffia if she can manage, especially since she needs to learn to read before the other tutors arrive. With a look of pure determination, Raffia clenches her fist and declares she will make it work no matter what. Cassane watches her resolve with a satisfied, knowing smile. Raffia eagerly promises Margaret she will study hard, and the maid respectfully promises to assist her new lady. Raffia asks one question: what will happen to her identity when the contract ends? Cassane swiftly dismisses her concern, telling her that's a problem for the distant future. His voice echoes in her mind, telling her to secure her own position as her red eyes gleam with understanding. Filled with a new sense of purpose, Raffia brightly exclaims, "All right, let's do this." The official story begins to circulate. Count and Countess Estelanta traveled to the capital to seek treatment for their ailing daughter. According to the tale, their carriage was ambushed by bandits on the road. The narrative concludes grimly. The Count and Countess were robbed and murdered. The public story continues, detailing how their young daughter miraculously survived and was rescued by Cassian, who then escorted her to safety. The scene shifts to a grand, sunlit cathedral where the story is spreading. Nobles gossip about the tragic, quote, survivor Raffia, noting her hair turned white from shock and commenting on how frail she appears for an 11-year-old. A noblewoman wonders why the young duke is escorting her personally, a question shared by others in the crowd. A nervous Raffia whispers to Cassian, worried that her sudden name change will seem suspicious. Cassane reassures her that people will just assume she abandoned an unlucky name after the trauma, a common practice for frail children. Raffia then worries about her white hair looking forced, while Cassane thinks to himself that such things are common for young noble girls. Cassane firmly tells her not to worry. With Solea backing her, no one can prove she is an imposter. He instructs her to simply shed a few quiet tears when people offer condolences, without saying a word. Raffia practices her role, covering her face with her hands and asking if she's doing it right. The Duke watches as the crowd murmurs about how heartbreaking her quiet crying is, and he internally praises her for a job well done. The Duke tells Raffia her role is now very important, while she, holding Kassan's hand, vows not to be a burden. Her unexpected formality startles both the Duke and Cassian, who exclaim in unison, "What?" Flustered, Raffia explains she thought calling him father would be more convincing, and she hastily apologizes for her reckless suggestion. The Duke calmly corrects her, explaining that calling him your grace is too formal and will raise more suspicion, leaving Raffia confused. The Duke thoughtfully considers her suggestion and, with a subtle nod, allows it. Raffia quickly retracts her suggestion, but the Duke reaffirms her right to call him as she wishes, firmly stating his permission and leaving her to nervously agree. Raffia offers an awkward thank you while Kassan silently questions if this is a good idea. With a faint private smile, the Duke savors the word she used, father. The scene shifts to a grand cathedral as the narrator formally announces the funeral of Count Morgan Estelanta and his wife, Countess Jennifer Estelanta. At the funeral, Raffia stands alone as the newly titled Lady Estelanta, while a voice calls for all to pay their final respects. A hand places a white rose, and the narration identifies the girl as Lady Fia Estelanta. Raffia, her face veiled in black lace, closes her eyes and silently vows to uphold the family honor. With determined red eyes, she wishes the deceased a final, peaceful rest. A pair of coffins adorned with white roses symbolizes the promise of eternal rest. Outside the hall, the blonde man Josh greets the Duke and Kassan, who curtly dismisses the pleasantries. The Duke states plainly that it's only natural, as family should help each other. Josh and the other nobles are stunned by his words, questioning his use of the word family in relation to Lady Estelanta. The Duke matter-of-factly confirms their suspicions, leaving the nobles utterly bewildered. Clearing his throat, the Duke admits that while he didn't plan to announce it here, the current circumstances demand it. As the nobles listen in shock, the Duke explains that he had to prioritize the stability of the orphaned Lady Estelanta. He then formally presents the new Lady Raffia Estelanta. Taking her hand, the Duke announces that she will be engaged to his son. The announcement concludes with the introduction of his son, Kassan Solea. Raffia and Kassan stand together holding hands, a portrait of a newly engaged couple surrounded by white flowers. The Duke declares that as his future daughter-in-law, Raffia will stay at the ducal estate, shocking Josh and the other nobles. With an intense glare, the Duke finishes his declaration. She will be treated not as a guest, but as family. The scene transitions to a quiet, moonlit night. A noblewoman quietly asks her companion, a blonde man, if Lady Estelanta's name was indeed Raffia. Another noblewoman with blue hair concedes that she thinks so, though she can't be sure due to the family's reclusive nature. A noble with brown hair despairs, lamenting that this is just handing over all their hard-won influence to someone else. The blue-haired noble furiously questions the Duke's rash decision, demanding to know if he understands the gravity of the situation. Other nobles whisper amongst themselves, questioning the value of the ruined Estelanta house, and recalling the late Count's reputation as a hopeless addict. A blonde man brings up the late Countess's terrible behavior, but an orange-haired woman named Lady Atticus interrupts, believing there's still an opportunity. Surprised, the blonde man acknowledges the influential Lady Atticus. Lady Atticus speculates that Raffia's poor health and lack of education will eventually lead the Duke to change his mind, reminding everyone it isn't a marriage yet. Holding her fan with a sly smile, she dismisses the news, calling it just an engagement. The other nobles quickly agree with Lady Atticus, noting that an engagement is far easier to break than a divorce. With a confident smile, Lady Atticus looks forward to the New Year's festival with a newfound sense of anticipation. She glances at her companions with a cunning smile, asking if they agree with her assessment. Meanwhile, Raffia and Margaret are shown diligently practicing writing at a large wooden desk. Tap. Margaret sets down her pen and suggests they end the lesson for the day. Raffia eagerly offers to continue studying on her own, admitting that she was having fun. Amused, Margaret suggests she look outside the window instead. Raffia turns with a curious expression, wondering what's at the window. She gasps with delight, realizing that it has started to snow. A cold wind blows through the snowy landscape. Dressed in a beautiful pink winter coat, Raffia revels in the beautiful snowfall. Wah! Her joy is cut short as she trips and falls face first into the snow, and Margaret cries out in alarm. Raffia lets out a groan as Margaret rushes to her side, but she quickly sits up, dazed but unharmed. Two cheerful maids with matching orange-brown hair and glasses arrive, bundled in warm cloaks. The two maids rush to Rafia's side, joyfully telling her how much they've missed her and welcoming her. As the maids mention hearing of her hardships, Rafia's expression saddens, realizing they've been told the fabricated story of the Estelante tragedy. The maids recall how thin and anxious she looked, but they're relieved she seems healthier, attributing it to the menu books with her favorite meals they sent ahead. They enthusiastically describe the dishes they found for her, including pasta with extra ragu and a soft, chewy pavlova that they imagine tastes like eating clouds. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Rafia is enveloped in a group hug by the two maids, who are just happy they could help. Margaret tells the maids to calm down before they suffocate the lady, but Rafia insists that she's all right. Addressing the maids as Neff and Nettie, Margaret decides it's time to tell Rafia something important. Margaret instructs Rafia to speak informally to all her attendants from now on, leaving Rafia to question why. Rafia gasps in shock, stammering in protest at the sudden change in etiquette. A voice explains that no high-ranking noble speaks formally to servants, and critics will use any flaw against her. Looking hesitant, Rafia admits she isn't used to it, and worries she might slip up. With renewed determination, Rafia vows not just to try, but to succeed, earning proud smiles from her three attendants. Outside in the snow, one of the maids asks Rafia if this is her first time seeing it. Nettie cheerfully demonstrates how to form a heart-shaped snowball, presenting it as a token of her love for Rafia. Wow! Rafia's eyes sparkle with pure amazement as she beholds the heart made of snow. Eagerly, Rafia asks if she can try making one too, and Nettie happily encourages her. Rafia carefully holds the snow heart, her expression a mixture of concentration and wonder. In a cigar-filled room, Josh warns the Duke he'll get sick and offers to open a window for ventilation. As he opens the window, Josh stops, looking outside with a surprised, "Huh?" Josh urges the Duke to look at what he's found, catching the Duke's serious attention. The Duke looks out the window, questioning the lone snowball resting on the sill. Whoosh! A second snowball lands neatly beside the first, surprising the Duke. Now standing beside Josh at the window, the Duke quietly wonders why the snowballs are there. Elsewhere, Sein wonders hopefully if his father will like the gift. Rafia looks up at the window, hoping her snowman gift for father doesn't melt too quickly. Seeing her maid's tense expressions, Rafia asks what's wrong, unaware of the Duke's silhouette watching from the window behind them. Gasp! A sudden presence behind her makes Rafia turn around in shock. She comes face to face with the Duke, nervously calling him father. The Duke tells her not to worry, warning that her hands will get cold, as Rafia quickly says they were about to go inside. Announcing their departure, Rafia and her maids turn and walk away from the Duke. Back inside, Josh asks the Duke if he should clean up the snow, but the Duke has other plans. The Duke calmly orders a stunned Josh to leave the snow and carve an icebox to store it in. With a faint private smile, the Duke looks at a small snowman family outside and muses how that child ever met his son. Later, in the library, Rafia finishes copying a book and wonders which one to borrow next. She smiles contentedly, thinking how much fun it is to learn to read. Deciding to tackle something more difficult than fairy tales, she reaches for a book on a higher shelf. Her eyes scan over several titles, including The Dilemma of Power and How to Tell Funny Jokes. Perched on a ladder, Rafia pauses, intrigued by the book on how to tell funny jokes. Her red eyes widen with sudden, intense interest. She then spots a different book, glowing faintly on a much higher shelf. The book bears a family crest, and she wonders if it belongs to her new family. Reaching with all her might, she whispers, just a little more." She stands on her toes, struggling to reach the glowing green book far above her. Her fingers just barely brush against the spine of the mysterious book. Tap! Her fingers finally find purchase, and she successfully grasps the book. She pulls the book free but loses her balance, crying out as she begins to fall. While Rafia tumbles backward off the tall ladder. Bracing for the fall, she closes her eyes with a soft, "Ah! You really..." Kassan holds Rafia safely in his arms, telling her he can't leave her alone for even a moment. Kassan's stern expression is interrupted by a voice calling out his title. Startled by Rafia's hands on his face, Kassan thinks his heart stopped, while she frantically apologizes. Raffia thanks Kasain for catching her, but shyly notes to herself that they are a little too close. Blushing, she looks up at him and politely asks the young duke to please put her down now. Kasain stares down at Raffia with an intense, unreadable expression, still holding her in his arms. After setting her down, Kasain asks why the bookshelf is disorganized, and a flustered Raffia explains that she wanted to try reading more difficult books. He considers her request to rearrange the books but then pivots, asking when she entered the library. Cassian explains that he was napping nearby, prompting an apologetic Raffia to say she is sorry for waking him. He coolly states he didn't say anything about it, leaving Raffia to pout with a sulky expression. Cassian bluntly asks, "So?" leaving a baffled Raffia to wonder what he means with a confused, "Huh?" He offers to get the book she wants to read for her, and a flustered Raffia stammers as she points toward the shelf. She anxiously points to a specific book titled How to Tell Funny Jokes. Kasain is left speechless and utterly perplexed by her unexpected choice of reading material. Russell. He hands her the book, and she quietly thanks him for his help. Kasain calls her kid and asks why she still speaks formally with Margaret and Anton, leaving Raffia shocked that he knew. Raffia admits she finds it difficult because her mouth won't cooperate, while Kasain listens thoughtfully. Kasain reassures her that their status makes it fine and that he'll talk to them, and Raffia thanks him, overjoyed. Raffia asks if he's going back to sleep, but Kasain informs her that he needs to head out now. As he leaves, Cassian thinks that he wasn't really sleeping and feels as if someone is watching him. Raffia expresses her concern, noting that he seems too busy to even eat properly these days. He gently pats her head with a soft smile, promising they'll eat together once things settle down. With a warm "see you next time," Kasain turns and departs from the library. Raffia watches him walk away, still clutching the book he retrieved for her. She turns back, determined, as the book in her hands begins to glow with a faint magical light. The book reveals the history of the Kofan Empire, which was once home to two distinct religious orders. A war erupted between the two orders, ending with the victorious gods judging the defeated, who then fled into exile. Reading on, Raffia realizes that the current state religion is the order that won the ancient war. She finally understands the truth. The defeated order was the Grenier clan, revealing the mysterious origin of her name, Lapia. She wonders about the author of the book, sensing their dissatisfaction and a strong desire for power. With a sudden slam, she snaps the book shut. Her expression a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. Her red eye widens in astonishment as she wonders why such incredible secrets are written in this book. The book describes a prophecy from the primordial god, stating that a chosen child can wield 3 stages of power, the first being restraint. The sun rises, casting a warm glow over the Grand Ducal estate. Holding a hairbrush, Margaret asks Raffia if she is all right, and Raffia replies that she is fine, despite not sleeping well. Margaret correctly guesses Raffia was studying late again, praising her progress, while a yawning Raffia insists she must keep working hard. Raffia asks Margaret, who buys the library's books, and Margaret explains Sir Josh handles the budget, while butler Anton makes the purchases. Margaret explains that the library isn't exclusively for the Solea family, recalling a time when the temple demanded certain documents be burned. She continues, explaining that the scholarly head of the family at the time defied the temple, preserving the books and making the library a draw for scholars. Margaret sighs that such visits have now stopped, not because of enemies, but because the Duke and Kasain are extremely reserved. As she finishes brushing Raffia's hair, Margaret notes that the hope for a more social life remains just a wish. Raffia wonders if they truly dislike the public eye that much, privately thinking it's a relief since she can avoid being put on display. Raffia has a sudden jolt of realization, exclaiming that today is that day. It is the first day of meeting her new etiquette teacher, a woman named Viscountess Audrey Deckers. Raffia, dressed in a beautiful green gown, performs a perfect curtsy and graciously thanks the teacher for accepting her request. The blonde-haired teacher compliments Raffia's greeting as perfect and states that it is a pleasure to meet her. Introducing herself as Audrey Deckers, the teacher promises to help the young lady grow into a fine lady. Audrey's green eyes sparkle as she internally remarks that she never expected Raffia to be such a lovely young lady. Audrey mentions she couldn't see Raffia's face at the funeral due to her veil, and Raffia confirms the Viscountess attended. PFFT. While expressing her deep appreciation for the kindness, Raffia struggles to stifle an unexpected laugh. Audrey recalls rumors of Raffia's frailty and asks if she misheard, while Raffia admits she lacks in many ways and is mortified to start her education so late. Audrey dismisses her concerns, stating that for a noble, a lack of knowledge is a trivial matter. Raffia explains that her health has dramatically improved due to the Duke's generosity, and as they walk, Audrey praises her good mindset. Audrey, her etiquette teacher, formally introduces herself, while Raffia expresses her eagerness to learn and looks forward to her guidance. Raffia asks if she should call her teacher, an idea Audrey finds amusingly formal. While pouring tea, Audrey suggests Raffia call her by her first name, but Raffia protests that it would be improper. Audrey clarifies that wasn't her intention, leaving a sweaty and confused Raffia to wonder what she meant. Audrey explains the noble art of indirect refusal, making Raffia groan with the realization that she's already made a social mistake. Audrey reassures her that this is exactly why she is here, promising that Raffia will learn gradually. Changing the subject, Audrey asks Raffia if she knows what they have in common, leaving Raffia to ponder the question. With a smile, Audrey reveals their shared trait. They are both wearing beautiful green dresses. Raffia compliments the color on Audrey, who is delighted by her words and returns the praise. Audrey notes that green is her favorite color and points out that Raffia's eyes are green as well, which Raffia thanks her for noticing. Audrey leans in, proudly stating that her green eyes are her greatest pride. When asked if she likes green, Raffia hesitantly calls it a noble and rare color, unable to give a direct answer. With an intense look, Audrey suggests the color green is reserved for the chosen ones. An uncomfortable Raffia forces a laugh, nervously wringing her hands at the turn in conversation. Audrey notes green is the imperial family's hair color, then muses on how well the noble color suits her, while Raffia recalls a grim memory. Audrey leans forward, her expression triumphant, as she asks if their shared traits make them truly chosen ones. A tense silence hangs in the air as Raffia and Audrey sit opposite each other at the tea table. The scene shifts with a sudden, sharp rustle. Later, Raffia collapses onto a sofa, sighing that the tense meeting has left her completely exhausted. Margaret approaches with a smile, asking Raffia how her first lesson with the Viscountess went. Raffia replies with a bright smile that her teacher seemed both kind and cheerful. Margaret explains that the Deckers family serves the Duke, with the Viscount handling administrative affairs in the capital, rarely visiting the territory. Raffia wonders why Lady Audrey would come all the way from the capital if her family isn't based in Solea. Margaret suggests that perhaps the quiet life in Solea suits her better than the capital. Raffia thoughtfully doubts that a person like Audrey would enjoy rural life or solitude. Margaret brings up a stack of invitations, asking what they should do about the growing pile. Margaret advises Raffia to politely decline the invitations for now, noting society's eager curiosity about her. As Raffia worries about being rude, Margaret firmly states they all know the sender's true intentions. Another maid huffs in agreement, stating the nobles just want to spy on the future Duchess and pick her apart. The maid concludes that by sending such invitations, the nobles are the ones dishonoring Raffia, not the other way around. Margaret smiles gently, telling a relieved Raffia not to rush and to just decline for the time being. Raffia muses that there's no harm in revealing herself to society at a later time. With that decision made, she beams with a bright, happy smile. Margaret suddenly recalls that the head chef was asking about Raffia's birthday, much to her surprise. Margaret describes the chef's unmatched enthusiasm, as he is already sketching designs for a grand 10-tier cake to celebrate. Raffia is utterly bewildered, contemplating the sheer scale of a 10-tier birthday cake. After Raffia reveals her birthday is October 1st, Margaret is thrilled they can still celebrate it. Ah, a sudden thought strikes Raffia with a jolt. She eagerly asks Margaret about the birthdays of the Duke and the young Duke. Margaret states the Duke's birthday is the last day of November, but trails off when considering the young Duke's. Oh my. An exclamation of surprise rings out as the view shifts to a table covered in discarded, crumpled papers. A horrified Raffia asks, "Pardon?" her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. As the sun sets over the estate, she realizes the young Duke's birthday is the day after tomorrow. Raffia panics about not having a gift, but Margaret calmly reassures her that it will be fine, Raffia looks confused, wondering why her lack of preparation would be considered fine. Margaret explains that they've never really celebrated the Duke's and Young Duke's birthdays separately. She recalls that young Duke Cassine always disliked celebrating, finding it a hassle and warning them not to do anything cringeworthy. They usually just offer a simple morning greeting, but Raffia still feels a birthday deserves more. Frustrated in her room, Raffia discards yet another gift idea, crying out, "Not this either." Slumped at her desk, she wonders how many times she's rewritten her plans, as the narration dryly confirms, exactly 38 times. Her thank you message becomes so long that it hardly resembles a birthday letter anymore. A festive trick-or-treat envelope is finally prepared for the young Duke. Exhausted, Raffia collapses onto her desk, wondering why writing a single letter was so difficult. She resolves to give it to him, worrying that, while it's the only gift she has, her handwriting is too messy. Raffia anxiously wonders if the young Duke will even like it. Recalling Margaret's words that he considers celebrating a hassle, she falls into a thoughtful silence, weighing her options. But still, she stands with renewed purpose, determined to follow through. Deciding it's better than giving nothing, she firmly addresses the letter to the young Duke. The scene shifts to a sunlit conservatory, where a guest is announced for the madam. In the garden, a smug Audrey sips her tea, musing that people always seem to have a sixth sense for these things. An angry, blonde-haired man confronts Audrey, demanding to know why she accepted the role of etiquette tutor for Count Estelanta's daughter without notifying them. He asks if she refused the offer, but with a serene smile, Audrey confirms that she accepted it. While Audrey privately muses that she has her reasons, the man angrily demands to know what she is scheming. She plays it down, claiming it's no grand scheme but simply a chance for both sides to get to know each other better. As he clenches his fist and mentions their friendship, she coolly cuts him off, asking what the rush is. Audrey smiles, explaining that since there are years before the young Duke and Lady Estelanta marry, this is a perfect chance to bridge the gap. Meanwhile, Raffia wanders the estate in her nightgown, realizing she doesn't even know where to find Cassine. Standing before a grand door, she decides that this must be the only way to find him. Creak. She peeks tentatively around the door, her voice a hesitant. A surprised red-haired man in a formal uniform turns, addressing her as Lady Lapia. As Raffia stammers an apology, the red-haired man looks down, seemingly flustered by her sudden appearance. He offers to leave if he's bothering her, but she panics and quickly insists that he stay. She calls out his name, Sir Rick, and asks for a moment of his time, much to his surprise. He kneels respectfully as she explains she thought he might know something, prompting him to ask what she needs. With a nervous blush, Raffia asks if he knows where the young Duke is right now. She holds up the letter and explains she wants to give it to him, and Sir Rick quietly acknowledges her request. When Sir Rick offers to deliver it on her behalf, she immediately and forcefully refuses his help. Clutching the envelope, she nervously insists on delivering it personally, much to his slight exasperation. He notes the late hour and expresses concern that this is likely her first time visiting that location. Deciding to help, he offers to escort her to the grounds himself. A sudden, sharp memory hits Raffia. The name Rick Gunther flashes over a gruesome image of his bloody, violent death. She recalls that he was the first person she ever killed, a vice-captain of the Ducal Knights and an exceptional Vullian. The weight of the dark memory settles upon her, her expression turning somber and haunted. Her eyes fly open as the memory's implication hits her, letting out a shocked, "Huh." She frantically denies the thought, trying to push away the horrifying realization. Recalling his death, she realizes it wasn't because she hated or feared him. It was simply something else. Flustered by her conflicting memories, she stammers as she watches Sir Rick walk ahead. Sir Rick stops and points the way, telling her to continue straight ahead from there. He explains he'll take his leave now, giving her privacy to speak with the young Duke alone. She watches him depart, left alone and speechless with her thoughts. At the last moment, she calls out his name again, sincerely thanking him for the escort. He turns slightly, replying that it was no trouble at all. She arrives at the training grounds, marveling at their enormous size as she walks up the steps. Clutching her letter, she scans the empty area, wondering where the young Duke could be. Her eyes land on a figure on an upper level, and she excitedly exclaims, "Ah, there he is." She happily calls out to the young Duke, but he suddenly screams for her not to come any closer, freezing her in shock. Her eyes widen in disbelief as she sees the young Duke, his hair now glowing blue amidst a storm of dark purple energy. She continues to stare, her thought echoing in confusion. Young Duke? As the crackling purple aura intensifies around him. Wielding a sword seething with dark magic, he shouts for her to stay put, promising he will come to her. Whoosh! A massive explosion of violent purple energy erupts from his body, consuming the training ground. As the violent energy recedes, the young Duke stands alone amidst the destruction on the training grounds. The purple aura flickers out as he stares down at his sword, the volatile power now contained. Clang! He drops the sword, the sound echoing across the stone floor as the danger passes. He turns to find Rafia, asking why she's still up so late as she stammers a reply. He teases that she needs sleep to grow taller, but she retorts that staying up will make him a little duke. He asks what brings her to the training grounds, and she nervously asks for just a moment of his time. With a radiant smile, Rafia presents a golden pocket watch. The young Duke recognizes it as Margaret's, and Rafia confirms she borrowed it for a purpose. He questions her plan, but she simply tells him to wait, her expression full of secretive anticipation. Tick-tock. The hands of the golden pocket watch slowly approach midnight. Just as the clock strikes 12, she gently places the watch in his hand. She beams with joy, her mission seemingly accomplished. The young Duke stares back in utter bewilderment, completely baffled by her actions. She proudly presents her gift to him, a magical aura glowing from her empty hands. He glances down at his own empty hand, confused by her strange birthday present. A narration bubble wonders why the young Duke seems so down on his birthday. After delivering her congratulations, Rafia turns to leave, but he offers to walk her back. She insists he must be tired, but he firmly states that he isn't and will escort her. As they walk through the moonlit garden, she calls out to the little Duke, and he softly replies. He stops suddenly, his expression softening as he responds to her. Rafia turns back, pouting and questioning his silence. He asks what she is doing as she shyly begins to form words of affection. She claps her hands together and begins singing a heartfelt happy birthday to the little Duke. Rafia protests in embarrassment, but he admits that despite her bad singing, it still sounded nice. He confesses it's been a long time since anyone sang for him, and though unexpected, he liked it. With a gentle, appreciative smile, he sincerely thanks her for the birthday song. He calls her Sei, but she panics, exclaiming that she can't possibly call the little Duke by his name. He asks if it's that difficult, and she emphatically confirms that it is. He smiles wistfully, explaining that his mother used to call him by that name. A tender memory surfaces of his blonde-haired mother affectionately calling him Sein as a child. Rafia excitedly notices it's snowing, but the young Duke remarks that he always found snow dreadful. Closing his eyes, he takes in the moment and concedes that tonight it feels nice. Rafia's thoughts shift to a book as she contemplates being the last of the Grignard bloodline. She recalls the fiery tragedy of her past, knowing everyone else died the day she fled. Staring at a lone, glowing book on a high shelf, she wonders if its author also wished for their people to be remembered. She believes her ancestors must have left traces of their existence behind, so that the name Grignard would not be forgotten. Walking through a sunlit hall, she remembers that House Solea is the only noble house that stands independent of the crown and temple. Gazing out the window with newfound resolve, she vows to become stronger. Her red eyes gleam with determination. Time passes, and Rafia is seen in a formal purple coat, looking slightly older. Sein, dressed in a formal uniform, teases her about her height, saying he told her to sleep more. To her surprise, he kneels before her, asking if this makes it easier to talk. Rafia laughs, noting this is the first time she's been taller than him, as he thinks that it feels like they're equals. He gently pats her head as he departs, and she wishes him a safe trip. From the doorway, she watches him approach a grand ducal carriage. Her expression turns to one of concern as she wonders if he'll be returning late again. Margaret confirms it's likely, explaining the long-standing issue with the upper guild. Rafia asks if a salt supply threat is the cause. Margaret clarifies that the traders have inflated prices, so the young Duke went to negotiate. Rafia silently wishes she could help. Rafia stands in a garden, clad in a formal purple coat, thinking to herself that it's not the right time yet. Her etiquette lesson concludes, and the white-haired student smiles at her teacher, thinking that the language of the fan is difficult and her wrist is sore. The blonde-haired teacher offers a suggestion before the lesson ends. piquing the students' curiosity. The teacher narrates that a year has passed, and while Lady Lapia has progressed remarkably, she must learn to apply her etiquette skills in real-world situations. Rafia thoughtfully agrees, acknowledging the need to handle any situation with flexibility. With a brilliant smile, the teacher presents an invitation, announcing her suggestion is a tea party. Rafia is shocked as her teacher explains she bought the invitation as a good opportunity and urges her to open it. The teacher reveals the invitation is from the Galoni Count's family for their daughter Brigitte, another one of her proud students. She explains that Lady Brigitte is hosting her first tea party next week, presenting a perfect chance for Rafia to build connections. Rafia studies the glowing invitation, contemplating that it might be a good idea for the future, but her expression is uncertain. A wave of relieved joy washes over Rafia as she laughs, having seemingly come to a decision. The teacher watches her with a knowing look, saying her hesitation is understandable. Rafia graciously thanks her teacher for the opportunity. Knock, knock, knock. A voice from behind a closed door invites someone to come in. Rafia peeks into the room, nervously asking her father if he is busy. The purple-haired man, holding some documents, replies that he was just about to take a break. He gestures for her to come in and have a seat. When he asks why servants aren't serving the tea she brought, she smiles, saying she wanted to spend time with him. As she serves the tea, she begins to address her father, but hesitates. 3 cute plush dolls resembling her father, and the young Duke are shown as someone asks for them to be returned. Suddenly, a panicked Sir Josh appears, desperately calling for his lady as a shocked Rafia recognizes him. Sir Josh begs her to reason with the Duke, who has threatened that he'll melt along with a snowman if it's not protected. As Sir Josh despairs that the stress will kill him, Rafia watches in horror, thinking his soul is literally leaving his body. Rafia resolves to do something about the situation, noting later that she managed to solve the snowman issue. Back at the tea table, her father possessively declares, "No, it's mine," as Rafia asks if he's really going to keep it. He looks away with a surprising jolt, insisting it's his preference. Rafia smiles sweetly, changing the subject by saying she came to ask for a favor. As she pours tea, she announces her wish to start interacting with other noble families. When her father questions what she means, she explains she's practiced hard and is no longer clumsy with teacups. Her father explodes in anger, demanding to know who dared call her clumsy, but she quickly insists no one did. She calmly clarifies that she used to be clumsy on her own. She admits her past clumsiness and assumes he must have thought her lacking, but he replies that he's never seen anyone as composed. She counters by mentioning Lord Sein, but her father dismisses the boy as not being childlike before catching himself. Rafia's face lights up with a radiant smile as she cheerfully agrees, "Yes, Lord Sein." Her father is struck with comical despair, feeling as though he's already marrying off his daughter. Regaining his composure, he asks about her desire to socialize and acknowledges the tea party invitation she received. He scoffs at the idea of her going, suggesting they could simply summon the other party to their home instead. Rafia explains she wants to experience another family's event to learn how to host her own parties one day. After she reveals the invitation is to the Geloni family's party, her father's expression darkens as he reflects that the Gelonis are self-serving. He gives her a stark warning, leave nothing behind, especially anything that seems suspicious. His gaze is sharp and serious as he gives his daughter this crucial piece of advice. He tells Lapia to keep his words in mind, and she nervously agrees. With a menacing aura, he stresses that she must be observant down to the tiniest detail, and she quickly confirms she understands. With newfound determination, Rafia clenches her fist, her determined face looming over an image of the Grand Geloni estate. Rafia carefully pens her acceptance letter to the invitation, signing it with her name, Lapia Estelanta. She worries they might criticize her handwriting, prompting 2 maids behind her to cry out in disbelief. Margaret passionately declares she would treasure a reply from Rafia as a family heirloom, leaving Rafia flustered. Rafia instructs a maid to take the sealed letter to the head butler, and the maid eagerly accepts the task. She then asks Margaret if Lord Sein has arrived yet, and Margaret informs her he has not. Margaret reassures her he should be back soon, and Rafia, now in her nightgown, decides she will go meet him herself. Margaret offers to accompany Rafia, but she insists on going alone, telling the maid to handle her own duties. Elsewhere, 2 knights in purple uniforms discuss how their swords seem to be dulling unusually fast lately. One of the knights expresses his frustration, wondering why the blades are deteriorating despite their daily maintenance. With a soft tap, A slippered foot steps onto the stone path as a voice praises the knights for their hard work. The two knights turn around, completely startled by the sudden arrival. Raphia appears before them, greeting them with a bright, cheerful smile. The knights bow respectfully, informing her that the young duke has not yet arrived, but she explains she came to meet him. The knights realize that, with the young duke absent, they finally have a chance to speak with her, much to Raphia's amusement. After hearing their swords are rusting, Raphia asks to see them, but a flustered knight warns her that it's a dangerous item to inspect. Despite their hesitation, the knights seem both nervous and pleased by her attention. Raphia looks up with wide, determined red eyes. Undeterred by their warning, the knights still appear worried, muttering that letting her inspect the swords might be difficult. A soft, magical light begins to emanate from Raphia, her expression serious. Wah! A burst of purifying light flows from Raphia, knocking the knights over as they vow to keep this miracle a secret from the young duke. Raphia quietly asks them to keep what they just saw between them, and they quickly promise. She seals their pact with a sweet smile, holding out her pinky. Overcome with emotion, the knights are moved to tears as they accept her promise. Ugh. One knight pokes the other in the cheek, who angrily protests the sausage-like fingers. The two knights begin arguing over who Raphia was making the promise with, each claiming she held her finger out to him. They demand Lady Lapia choose between them, leaving her flustered and speechless. Raphia's expression turns serious as she looks past their squabble. She notes the swords seem well-maintained and reaches out to touch a blade, causing the knights to panic and shout at her to stop. She calmly reassures them that she's being careful and it will be fine. The knights reluctantly agree but urge her to be cautious as she kneels to inspect the swords, sensing something is strange. Inspecting the blade, she notices a strange texture resembling corrosion on multiple swords and asks how they are maintained. A knight explains their simple process, rinsing the blades with water and wiping them dry. Raphia thoughtfully repeats the word water, her mind racing. She asks where the water is from, and a knight replies it is drawn from Mount Kales. Looking toward the distant estate, she confirms the location of Mount Kales. With newfound resolve, Raphia decides she must go and investigate the mountain herself. She sets off on her journey, making her way through a forest path towards the mountain. Now dressed in formal attire, she wanders through a dark, foreboding forest, looking concerned. She realizes night has fallen, and she's been walking for a long time, feeling lost and going in circles. Feeling her energy drain, she knows she must hurry back to the estate, as she is reaching her limit. A sudden rustle in the nearby bushes startles her, and she flinches in alarm. She turns cautiously toward the sound, her expression filled with apprehension. From the darkness, glowing eyes appear, revealing two snarling wolves emerging to confront her. The vicious wolves close in on Raphia, who stands frozen in fear. The scene shifts to the day of the tea party, where a voice notes her beautiful dress seems a bit plain. She replies she likes its comfort. Raphia stands radiantly in her modest but elegant beige dress, ready for the event. Margaret reminds her that a guest shouldn't outshine the host, and Raphia reluctantly concedes the point. Her attention is caught by someone off-screen, and she looks up in surprise. Seeing her father standing by the window, she calls out to him. The purple-haired duke turns to face her, his expression unreadable. Her father asks why she is out here, but she simply says she was taking a walk. Raphia smiles, internally questioning his excuse as she thinks he was just standing there the entire time. As her father prepares to depart, she cheerfully asks if he's leaving now. He calls her name Lapia, and her eyes widen as he captures her full attention. Her father gives her one last serious reminder to not endure any mistreatment in silence, and she nervously promises she won't. Her father commands his knights to protect the young duchess with their lives, and they readily accept as Raphia wonders when they arrived. Her father tells Lapia to be careful, and she promises to return safely before him and her dark-clothed escorts. The carriage wheel begins to turn, marking the start of her journey to the tea party. Leaves drift peacefully against a bright blue sky, signaling a change of scene. Raphia's carriage arrives at the grand and opulent Galoni estate. As a maid announces Lady Lapia Estelanta's arrival, the brown-haired Bridget Gellin eagerly exclaims that she's finally here. Lapia offers a graceful curtsy, politely introducing herself as Lapia Estelanta. Bridget and a purple-haired girl named Lucy welcome Lapia with smiles and invite her to come in. As a teacup is shown, Someone asks if she minds that they started the party a little early. Lapia smiles politely, but internally notes the early start is a clear sign she isn't very welcome. She resolves to overlook their rude attitude, reasoning that she can't say anything since the tea party has already begun. Bridget cheerfully offers to make introductions, noting that it's the first time everyone is met. She introduces the girl with brown pigtails as Lady Emily Persight, who offers a polite greeting. She then introduces the purple-haired Lady Lucy Harshan, who gives a curt greeting while sipping her tea. With the introductions over, someone suggests they continue the tea party. Lapia observes the other girls, thinking that while they're surprisingly making conversation, she still feels like a complete outsider. One of the girls asks Lapia if she ever feels out of place living at the Great Blue Hole. Bridget then pointedly asks Lapia if she gets along well with the young duke. Lapia realizes with a start that the other girls are being distant because of her connection to Sein. She cheerfully insists Sein is very considerate, but Bridget scoffs in disbelief, exclaiming that it can't be true. Bridget asserts that as his fiancée, Lapia must not know much about him. A reflection of the young duke appears as Bridget says he isn't someone who lets people get close to him. Lapia counters by asking about Lady Gellin, leaving Bridget flustered and speechless. Lapia calmly explains that she and Bridget are different people, just as everyone is different from one another. Recalling memories of his kindness, she confidently states that one day they will all see it too. She acknowledges, however, that they won't believe her until they witness it for themselves. Lapia beams, her confident smile radiating warmth and conviction. Bridget smirks, thinking to herself that this tea party should now be interesting. Putting on a friendly face, Lapia turns to the group and asks if everyone is having a good time. Bridget is surprised by the arrival of her mother and teacher. Her mother explains they were worried, and the teacher, Viscountess Diane, was curious. Viscountess Diane asks why Lapia attended, and she explains it was her teacher's recommendation and she's grateful to uphold her reputation. Bridget begins to introduce her mother, Countess Heir Gellin. Countess Heir Gellin, Bridget's mother, looks on with a reserved expression. Lapia bows politely to the Countess, introducing herself as Lapia Estelanta. The teacher praises Bridget for hosting such a wonderful tea party, calling her a proud first student. To support her student, the teacher announces she has prepared a small amusement with simple rules. She gestures towards a small, verdant path leading away from the garden. The teacher explains she has hidden notes for a treasure hunt, with each girl needing to find two. She cautions them not to go too deep into the woods, as the path connects to the hunting grounds. Reassuring them the notes are in safe places, she encourages them to have fun, as one girl quickly finds a note. Lady Emily excitedly reads that she's won a music box from a famous artisan, Gilles Raymond. Bridget also finds a note and begins to read what she has won. Bridget excitedly hopes her prize, a lace fan, is like their teacher's, as Lapia stands awkwardly to the side. Lapia realizes with a sigh that getting along with these young ladies is not going to be easy. Feeling left out, she decides to take a walk by herself before returning. Lapia wanders alone down a sunlit path into the lush green forest. She closes her eyes, taking a moment to enjoy the peaceful atmosphere. Her moment of peace is broken as she is suddenly startled by something nearby. She spots a cute little fox, but her concern grows as she realizes it has been hurt. Grrr. Hiss. The fox snarls defensively, and Lapia deduces it must have been caught in a trap from the hunting grounds. Raffia calmly offers to help the injured fox, telling it to stay still. Grrr. As she gently reaches out, the defensive fox continues to growl at her. AHH. The fox suddenly lunges, causing a startled Raffia to trip and fall backward. The scene blurs as Raffia tumbles down a small, leafy embankment. OWW Raffia sits up, dazed and sore from the fall. Her eyes widen in alarm as she recognizes her surroundings, recalling the warning not to go too deep into the hunting grounds. Feeling a sense of urgency, she realizes she needs to hurry back. A sudden rustle in the bushes startles her, putting her on high alert. The scene shifts to a girl with purple pigtails who feels a sudden chill, thinking something is off. A shadowy figure offers her a coat, mentioning the name Ulidi. The forest transforms into a surreal, magical landscape of vibrant colors. Hiding in the foliage, Raffia spots someone's fallen legs, certain she saw something drop there. A cloaked figure appears, and Raffia wonders with dread if the people from the orphanage, like the first Yuri, have been following her all this time. She crouches lower, deciding to stay calm and run the moment they move away. Time passes, shifting from the bright mountains of day to the deep blue of night. Lone Eagle soars through the moonlit sky, marking the passage of time. A single boot steps firmly onto the forest floor, signaling an arrival. Back in the woods, Raphia is distressed to find that the sun has already set. Feeling lost and walking in circles, she knows she is reaching her limit and must get back quickly. A voice from the bushes asks if this is the place, and a burst of dark energy erupts nearby, catching her attention. She turns toward the source of the commotion, her expression filled with fear. Two menacing wolves with glowing red eyes emerge from the darkness. The cloaked figure, Grenier, appears before her, mockingly asking if she enjoyed their game of hide-and-seek. Staring in horror at the approaching wolves, Raphia recognizes the name Grenier with terror. Grenier coldly tells her it's time to return where she belongs, but she defiantly protests. Gasp! She looks on, paralyzed with fear. With a look of grim resolve, she thinks to herself that she has no other choice. Grenier declares they didn't want to use force, implying the wolves will now attack. Whoosh! The wolves lunge forward to attack her. A flash of movement intervenes as a figure slices through the wolves, scolding them for hunting humans. The young Duke Sein stands protectively before a stunned Raphia, his sword drawn. Teask. The cloaked figure, Grenier, clicks their tongue in annoyance and orders someone to deal with this. Sein turns to Raphia, asking if she's hurt, as she stammers his name in shock. As tears well up, she asks how he found her, and he gently tells her not to cry. He covers her eyes with his gloved hand, telling her to look away from the ugly sight. With a confident smile, he looks back at the threat and promises to protect her. He leaps back into the fray, swiftly cutting down the remaining wolves. Clenching his jaw, he thinks how he'd love to wipe them all out with his aura. He hesitates, acknowledging that his control over his power is still imperfect. He knows Raphia could get hurt if he unleashes his full strength, and she covers her ears in response to the tense energy. As a new pack of wolves emerges, Sein curses in frustration, wondering where they keep coming from. Grrrk. He expertly blocks a pouncing wolf, its teeth clashing against his blade. Realizing the situation is escalating, he thinks that at this rate they're both in danger. Grr. He grimaces as he fends off another fierce attack. He clenches his teeth, frustrated that he can't keep her close to ensure her safety while fighting. Kid, he shouts, snapping her out of her shock. While holding off a wolf, he yells for her to escape to a horse waiting on the path. She asks what will happen to him, but he furiously orders her to go without worrying. Startled but understanding, she quickly agrees to his plan. As she turns to flee, she begs him to come back safely. As Lapia flees through the forest, a wolf lunges, only to be cut down in a spray of blood by a dark-caped figure. His face splattered with blood, a furious Sein seethes with rage at the attackers. Surrounded by a swirling purple aura, Sein stands ready with his sword, facing down another wolf. He thinks menacingly that they will pay for bothering him. His eyes glow with golden intensity as purple energy crackles along the blade of his sword. With a powerful slash, he sends a wolf flying through the air with overwhelming force. The purple energy erupts, blasting the entire wolf pack away in a single devastating wave. Sein unleashes a final, brilliant blast of power, ending the ferocious assault. He stands alone in the aftermath, the ground scorched by his dark energy. Having reached the path, Lapia finds the horse waiting patiently, a large bird perched on its saddle. As the horse nuzzles her, Lapia strokes its face and anxiously wonders if Sein will be okay. A rustle in the nearby leaves startles both Lapia and the horse, putting them on alert. Sein emerges from the forest, bloodied but alive. Noticing the bird, he says, "Peppo, you are here too," as Lapia cries his name in relief. He reassures her that the wolves are gone, but she points out with concern that he is bleeding. Ugh! Sein dismisses it as not his blood, only to grunt in pain and clutch his wounded side. Lapia exclaims that he's badly hurt, but he insists he's fine, though she tearfully protests. She tearfully blames herself for his injuries, but he firmly tells her it's not her fault. Crying, Lapia apologizes, asking if it hurts, while a frustrated Sein asks why she's still crying when he said he was fine. He gently chides her, saying she's supposed to say thank you. She stammers out her thanks, and he smiles faintly, approving. He tells her to thank his bird, Peppo, as well, since it was Peppo who helped him find her. As Peppo coos, Lapia thinks to herself that she heard a coo, and a small bird flies up. A tiny bird chirps beside her, and Lapia breaks into a bright, genuine smile. Now, on the horse, Lapia asks Sein why he isn't getting on, reminding him that his leg is hurt. Pointing out that she is also hurt, Sein dismisses his own injuries as not that bad. Lapia insists he's seriously injured, but he threatens to leave her behind if she keeps nagging, then questions if she even knows how to ride. She proudly claims she has learned, but he scoffs at her short legs and poor stance. Flustered, she insists she can manage while he thinks she cannot. Threatening to leave him, Lapia urges him to get on so they can ride faster together. He grumbles about her nagging. He mounts the horse behind her, telling her to trust him as he challenges her to show him how good she is. The scene shifts to the opulent Geloni estate under a starry night sky. The Duke confronts Count Geltown, who bows low in deference before his family and retainers. The Duke addresses the terrified Count Gelon, whose face is pale with fear. Looming over the Count, the Duke ominously asks if he understands the consequences should his daughter-in-law not be found by today. The Duke's eyes glow with cold fury, his expression one of pure menace. The Count stammers that it was just a treasure hunt, paling as the Duke repeats his excuse with contempt. As the Duke demands to know if House Gelon denies responsibility, the terrified Count apologizes profusely, admitting he has no excuse. The Duke sighs with frustration, noting with annoyance that the knights are late. He asks his subordinate for an update on the search, and the man confirms they are in constant communication. As the subordinate reports the search should be ending soon, he suddenly spots something in the distance and shouts for the Duke. Following the subordinate's frantic pointing, the Duke turns his sharp gaze toward the forest entrance. Sein and Lapia ride together through the grand archway, returning to the estate. A guard announces the return of the young Duke and his wife as they ride past, Sein slumped and bloodied against Lapia. A maid named Fliss rushes forward in distress, asking what happened, but Lapia tries to reassure her. Another woman, Margaret, asks how she can be fine when he's so injured. Sein quietly tells her to stop, as they are being watched. An unseen person reports to the Duke that they have returned safely, the focus on Sein's blood-stained uniform. Sein tells the Duke that he and Raffia will go to the carriage first, which the Duke allows with a simple thank you. As they depart, the Duke turns his cold attention back to the still bowing Count Gelon. The Duke lets out a heavy sigh, causing the terrified Count to stammer his title. Looking down at the Count, the Duke dictates the formal apology he expects from the House of Gello for the disgraceful incident. He then dismisses everyone, ordering them to escort the young couple's carriage, and his men instantly obey. From a distance, Bridget, her mother, and their teacher watch with shadowed, fearful expressions. Bridget glares with resentment, muttering that all this trouble is over that one wench. In a tense clearing, the Duke stands firm as Count Gelon bows low, and Bridget is comforted by her mother and another woman. Count Gelon pleads that his daughter is still young, while his wife urges Bridget to apologize, but Bridget defiantly argues she was just thinking aloud, same as her parents. Bridget screams in frustration that she could have been the Duchess if not for Lapia, questioning if she's not even allowed to think it. Reeling from the blow, Bridget cries out to her father, shocked he would hit her, only for him to yell, "Silence!" and slap her again. Count Gelon forces his daughter's head down into a bow, offering the Duke a profuse and desperate apology on her behalf. Holding Bridget's head down, the Count claims he failed to raise her properly, all under the Duke's cold, judgmental gaze. The Duke remarks that it seems the child isn't the one at fault, causing Count Gelon to break out in a cold sweat. As the Duke turns to leave, he issues a cold warning to the Gelons to be mindful of their conduct, while Bridget's mother watches. Sieske, Bridget's mother clicks her tongue in annoyance, hiding her disdain behind a black lace fan as thorns seem to surround her. Narration explains that as a pledge of punishment, a bundle of Bridget's hair was sent, banning her from society until it grew back, but the Duke remained displeased. The Duke's punishment is revealed. Count Gelon's hunting grounds have been revoked, and the name Cassine is mentioned. The scene transitions to a lavish bedroom, where the white-haired Lapia sits vigilantly beside an unconscious Sein. Lapia watches over him with worried red eyes, thinking that while his fever is down, he still hasn't woken up. She recalls him fainting upon their return to the mansion, realizing he had lied about being fine despite his injuries. Tears fill her eyes as she laments her inability to have helped Sein. She gently takes his hand in hers, whispering his name with concern. In a tender gesture, she brings his hand to her lips, closing her eyes. Startled, she feels his fingers twitch in her grasp. Sein's golden eyes flutter open as he weakly comments that her touch tickles. Stunned into silence, Lapia can only stare and stammer his name in disbelief. Overcome with relief, she bursts into tears of joy to see him finally awake. Sein looks at her, confirming that this isn't a dream and that he has truly woken up. A flashback shows Lapia tearfully begging him not to die for her, while he calmly assures her that he's not dead. Sein asks if she's hurt, but Lapia retorts that he's the hurt one and calls him an idiot. He playfully agrees, prompting her to call him an idiot again. A close-up on Sein's eye reveals he had been unconscious for 3 whole days. Lapia continues to cry, overwhelmed by the rush of emotions. He takes her hand in his, telling her it's fine as long as she is safe. He gently caresses her head, reminding her of his promise to protect her, and that their mutual safety is all that matters. Teasingly, he tells her to stop crying, or she'll get uglier, but she immediately retorts that she isn't ugly, making him laugh. He asks why she is still up, and she promises to stay until he is asleep. He jokes it is stunting her growth, but she insists she does not need to grow. She earnestly tells him his recovery is more important than her height and pleads to stay by his side, leaving him momentarily speechless. He suggests she lie down next to him, an offer that shocks her completely. Grunting in pain, Sein tries to sit up, causing Lapia to panic and urge him not to move. He tells her he can't sleep while she's fidgeting, and that her discomfort makes him uncomfortable as well. He repeats his offer for her to lie down, threatening to stay sitting up if she doesn't, which makes her worry his wounds will reopen. Blushing furiously, a flustered Lapia quietly agrees to his request. As she settles beside him, he remarks with a small smile that it's much better when she listens. Her heart pounds as she lies next to him, sneaking a wide-eyed glance in his direction. Sensing her gaze, he quietly asks, Lying beside him under the covers, she anxiously asks if he is really okay. They exchange heartfelt words. She admits her worry, he admits his own, and they trade apologies and thanks. She thinks about how mature he is and how being near him makes her feel safe and her heart flutter, calling him an idiot as she wishes him good night. Lapia sleeps peacefully on Sein's chest while he lies awake, watching over her with a gentle expression. The scene shifts to a recovered Sein, now dressed and looking thoughtfully out a window. A red-haired man approaches, asking Sein if he's sure he should be moving already. Looking at the estate grounds, the red-haired man warns Sein not to overdo it. Sein cheerfully flexes, attributing his quick recovery and light feeling to the excellent care he received from the kid. The red-haired man acknowledges his impatience, but cautions that pushing too hard could cause him to lose something even greater, leaving Sein to ponder his words. HMPH. Back outside, a recovered Sein stretches, annoyed that everyone is making a fuss when he insists he's fine. He looks down with a grim expression, thinking to himself that his current strength is still not enough. He flashes back to the fight in the woods, recalling how he thought he dealt with all the demonic beasts. He remembers with a grimace how the beasts laid in ambush, their glowing red eyes a stark contrast to the darkness. Grrr. He clenches his fist, realizing with frustration that the long period of peace had made him complacent. TSK. With fierce determination, Sein vows to become even stronger so he will never lose to anything again. He resolves to protect what is precious to him, as an image of a blushing, worried Lapia flashes in his mind. The scene transitions to a beautiful, ornate glass conservatory on the sunlit estate grounds. Inside, Sein and Lapia sit together for tea, and he quietly thinks to himself, somehow. Beaming with pure joy, Lapia enthusiastically confirms that she is indeed having fun. She happily explains how much fun she had eating meals and having tea while he was resting. He sips his own tea, pondering how long he's been away. Setting his cup down, Sein notes that she will be turning 13 soon. Lapia looks at him earnestly, asking if he will tell her everything when that time comes, but he remains silent. A close-up shows her wide, determined red eyes, a decision made. Looking resolved, Lapia announces that she can explain everything to him now. Sein asks what changed her mind, and she smiles, telling him she'll trust him because he first trusted her. She begins by revealing that someone was pursuing her in the forest, a fact she couldn't share during the earlier chaos. Sein recalls the cloaked figure in the tree, admitting he couldn't get a good look or track them as he was focused on saving her. He adds that, based on their build, The pursuer seemed to be about his own age. Sein asks if it's the same person who was after her in the capital, and Lapia confirms that it is. As Lapia wonders why she is being chased so persistently, Sein tells her he will explain the reason. In a shocking revelation, Lapia tells Sein her true identity. She is a quote-quote Grenier. He repeats the unfamiliar name in confusion. She explains that Grenier is her clan's name, meaning one who takes the voices of God, and that her name Lapia is also an ancient word. The clan is managed by the Order, and the chief's son is being pursued because he is of the direct line, though Sein still sees her as just a child. Lapia reveals her power. A Grenier's words enforce obedience, controlling not just the body but the mind, which makes Sein ponder thoughtfully. Sein calmly states that her revelation is roughly what he expected, causing Lapia to cry out in shock. He explains that her tantrum about not wanting to be a priest made him suspect a bad history with the temple, though he never imagined such an ability, and asks why it only awakens at age 13. Lapia admits she doesn't know the reason, only that she saw it in a prophetic dream where everything came true, which surprises Sein. Her dream began with a dark vision of the orphanage, foretelling a sponsor's visit. She explains that she believed the dream showed her future, so she ran away after seeing how the person would mistreat her. When Sein asks about her pursuer's identity, she reveals the name Yuri appeared in a bloody vision, a name used by many different people. She elaborates that the leader, the first Yuri, took her from the orphanage, and in her dreams, she was captured and forced to obey their commands. Horrifyingly, she confesses that in her prophetic dream, she was forced to manipulate and even harm many people, including Lord Sein's own close aides. Sein now understands her earlier reaction to Rick and asks if she wants to change that future. She confirms, saying she needs his help. With her hand over her heart, Lapia declares her resolve not to be used by Yuri. A confident, almost predatory smile spreads across Sein's face. Lapia asks if he wasn't surprised by her aura, because he also saw it in a dream, but he says that was only part of the reason. He calls her an amazing person, adding that he read in imperial history books that the first emperor used a similar power. As Sein says, it's natural for her to have this power. Due to her bloodline, he suddenly shouts in realization, startling Lapia. He exclaims that he has something to give her, confusing a younger, chibi-style version of himself. Lapia beams with happiness as she holds a large, elegantly wrapped gift. Sein stares in complete bewilderment at the present she's offering him. He asks what it is as a magnificent sword is revealed. Lapia explains she prepared it since his broke, and he agrees to accept it. He firmly grasps the new sword, taking it from its scabbard. Sein stands and inspects the ornate and powerful-looking blade. He remarks that it looks more ceremonial than practical, but a tearful Lapia insists she checked before buying it. She explains that according to the merchant, the blade was forged with elf stone and diamond. With this, she says, it will never break. Sein simply looks on, considering her words. Asking to be excused, Sein steps back as Lapia questions what he's about to do. In a formal gesture, Lapia presents the sword to him as if knighting him. Sein's expression is serious and thoughtful as he gazes at the sword, a gift born of her trust. With tears of joy in her eyes, Lapia smiles brightly as she formally presents the sword to Sein. As Sein takes the hilt, he wonders if he imagined the brief flash of light that came from the blade. A small, confident smile forms on his face as he decides that he is certain of what he saw. Holding the new sword, Sein tells a curious Lapia that he has one more thing to say. Lapia stands with a serene expression, thinking to herself that she is about to collapse soon. His eyes widen in alarm as her words register, and he can only think, "What?" Sein panics, asking if she was poisoned, but Lapia quickly assures him that is not the case. Sein realizes that this must be a necessary process for using her power. She confirms that in her dream it took a month, but reality may differ. He has a dreadful epiphany, wondering if using her word of power puts a heavy strain on her body. Lapia looks back at him with wide, surprised eyes, remaining silent. He now understands that this was why she was coughing up so much blood when they first met, and she apologizes for not telling him. Stroking his head, Sein warns her not to use her power unless absolutely necessary, but she reminds him of a promise she made. In a flashback, he skeptically asks if she was serious about killing someone, and she earnestly asks if he wasn't. The flashback continues with Sein scoffing at the idea of entrusting such a task to a child, insisting he deal with it himself, but she questions why, since she can solve it with a single word. Back in the present, Sein sternly tells her that relying on others' strength is something only powerless fools do. He continues his lecture, stating that such people will never know the satisfaction of achieving something with their own hands. Stunned into silence, Lapia just stares at him as he asks why she is still standing. Her eyes fill with tears as she smiles, thinking with conviction that she made the right choice by following Sein. Sein expresses his concern, suggesting a doctor or priest, but Lapia explains that if her Grenier identity is revealed, she will be branded a heretic. Sein acknowledges that his family wouldn't tolerate it either, realizing they have very few options. He decides their first step is to track Yuri, but notes the difficulty since the meticulous pursuer will hide if he senses he is being followed. When Lapia asks if he has a plan, Sein confirms there is one person they can turn to. Lapia outlines her plan's first rule. No one can find out she's sick, which means she cannot see a doctor. She then declares they must fire all the tutors, and Sein asks if she suspects one of them. As a hand removes a block from a tower, she explains the key is to keep their enemy from knowing their next move. She reasons that since Yuri doesn't know when her power will manifest, cutting off his information sources will completely block him. By doing so, she believes Yuri will grow anxious and be forced to reveal himself. The scene shifts as Lapia informs a woman that today will be their last lesson. A blonde-haired woman, her teacher, is introduced with a polite smile. The teacher laments the end of their lessons, praising Lapia as an exceptional student, but Lapia humbly deflects the compliment. The teacher presses for a reason for the sudden end to the classes, and Lapia nervously apologizes, vaguely blaming it on a family matter. Hiding her expression behind her fan, the teacher appears to accept the vague excuse. With a sharp look in her green eye, the teacher calls Lapia's name. She leans in close, asking if Lapia feels any resentment toward the Duke or his son, leaving Lapia confused. The teacher continues to probe, pointing out that Lapia's engagement was decided at a young age. She plants seeds of doubt, suggesting another man might love her more, and questioning if the Duke has been taming her all this time. The teacher dismisses the idea of simple brainwashing, describing it as a more cunning evil that destroys one's very soul and will. A noble crest featuring 3 crossed swords is displayed against a golden background. With tears welling in her eyes, Lapia warns her teacher not to trample on her goodwill and cross a line. The teacher is taken aback as Lapia firmly states that she was the one who chose them. A vision of Sein in his formal uniform appears, framed by blue roses, as Lapia proudly declares she chose him as her master. The teacher listens intently as Lapia concludes, stating confidently that she has no regrets. Lapia beams, her heart full of joy and conviction in her choice. Annoyed, the teacher states that Anton will provide compensation, muttering under her breath that the payment is a pittance. Lapia immediately confronts her, questioning if her comment about the payment implies she had an ulterior motive, shocking the teacher. Lapia leans in menacingly, preparing to interrogate the now flustered teacher. Lapia holds her fan, looking down at it with a thoughtful, serious expression. The teacher recalls the treasure hunt incident, remembering that the person who suggested it was the one who orchestrated the whole situation. Lapia has a flash of insight, realizing with a start that it was the Viscountess who orchestrated the forest incident. A close-up of Lapia's determined red eye shows her focus as she puts the pieces together. Continuing her interrogation, Lapia coolly states that she won't bother asking about her teacher's ulterior purpose. Lapia declares that while she understands, she doesn't forgive her, warning the teacher to leave quietly when given the chance. With a flash of memory, Lapia thinks about how that person never tolerates mistakes, which makes the blonde teacher flinch in terror. In a dark vision, the cloaked figure, Yuri, threatens that the teacher will never be able to speak honestly if he discovers her mistake. Yuri's threatening question about the punishment she'll receive fills the teacher's face with utter dread. Lapia explains that regardless of the teacher's motives, she won't let her mentor get hurt and asks how she plans to explain leaving. She presses further, asking if the teacher will use the ducal house's internal affairs as an excuse, but the woman remains silent. With a decisive snap of her fan, Lapia confirms that she has understood the situation correctly. The teacher gives a smug, knowing smile and formally announces that she will now take her leave. Phew. The intense confrontation over, Lapia collapses to the floor, completely drained of energy. Sitting by the piano, Lapia reasons that since the plan failed, Yuri will grow anxious, buying her a little more time. With a tear in her eye, she resolves to stay sharp and vigilant for whatever comes next. Elsewhere, the defeated teacher now lies prostrate on the floor before the ominous, cloaked figure of Yuri. Yuri looms over the teacher, who refers to him as her son and master, questioning why he didn't summon her to his location. The cloaked figure calmly suggests that she should step outside for some fresh air. Yuri remarks that Solea is more peaceful than expected, rendering all his efforts pointless. As the teacher trembles before him, he reveals her name, Audrey Deckers, explaining he recognized her family's ambition and that's why he shared his name with her. Yuri expresses his disappointment in Audrey's failure, and she apologizes, lamenting that she almost had the red gem in her grasp. He muses that he misjudged his affection for her, while Audrey desperately insists she did her best, but it was beyond her control. Yuri considers that he should have posed as a cart driver instead, as Audrey apologizes for her miscalculation, but he scoffs at her excuses. Kneeling down, Yuri calls out to Audrey Deckers, and she answers him with a nervous yes. Yuri coldly informs her that a hechiel without results is no different from trash, and her face contorts in horror. Audrey quickly reaffirms her loyalty as Yuri's servant, which earns a satisfied smile from her master. Yuri dismisses Audrey, telling her to hide quietly for now, and that he will send someone else if needed. She trembles and obeys. The cloaked figure of Yuri stands alone, thoughtfully contemplating his next move. A cruel smile spreads across Yuri's face as he wonders if he should set up a new board. The scene transitions to the grand and opulent ducal mansion on a bright day. An elegant white and gold carriage pulls up to the ornate gates of the estate. Lapia watches from her window as a group of officials, escorted by knights, arrives at the mansion. A voice from outside her door calls out to her, and she startles, recognizing it as Sein's. Sein enters her room with a serious expression, asking what has brought him here at this hour. He asks if she's felt suffocated after 10 days of confinement, but she says it's fine since Neff and Nettie have kept her company. Relieved, Sein is glad to hear it, just as Lapia asks about the noise outside and if a guest has arrived. Sein confirms that is exactly why he came, and dramatically pulls open the curtains to reveal the scene outside. With a grim look, Sein informs her that an envoy from the Imperial Palace has arrived. A woman with long brown hair, the Imperial envoy, formally announces a solemn command from the Emperor to the assembled Solea ducal house. A stern-looking man with purple hair, the Duke, watches the proceedings from a grand staircase. Sein descends the stairs, apologizing to the Duke for his tardiness. Sein stands beside the Duke, explaining he was contacted so suddenly that he had to take time to change into the proper attire. The Duke, Sein's father, confirms to his son that all the people of Solea are now gathered. A thought bubble wonders about the unexpected reason for an Imperial envoy's visit. The Imperial envoy, a man with long, dark brown hair, stands formally with his retinue behind him. The Duke sarcastically asks the envoy if he should dig up a coffin to prove everyone is present, but the envoy dismisses his morbid humor. The envoy declares his purpose. He has come to inquire about the whereabouts of the young Duke's new fiancée. With a cold look in his eyes, Sein steps forward to answer, stating that Lapia is currently under house arrest and bedridden. The envoy feigns surprise, remarking that house arrest is a severe punishment and implies the lady must have committed a grave offense. The Duke silently questions if the Imperial Palace has issued an order to investigate his daughter-in-law's punishment. The Duke angrily interrupts, telling the envoy to deliver the Emperor's message quickly if he is not there to pry into family matters. The envoy agrees with a subtle, knowing smile, ready to deliver the Emperor's command. The Imperial envoy commands her attendant to bring forth the Emperor's decree. With a decisive snap, she unrolls the official scroll, her expression unyielding. The Duke's golden eyes narrow as he thinks of the Sword of the Empire, the Solea ducal house. With a grim smirk, the Duke hears the command for his house to join the Western monster subjugation, considering it an honor to die for the Empire, while Sein looks on in shock. A vision of blood spattering against a golden crest signifies the deadly nature of the Imperial Order. A flashback reveals that 1 week ago, an emergency council decided to recruit over half the knights from the great noble families for this campaign. The narration adds that the second and third princes from the imperial family will also be joining the subjugation. Back in the present, the Duke asks Sein if he has anything to say, to which Sein asks what he is supposed to say. The Duke explains that he granted Lapia's wish to be put on probation and dismissed her tutors. He tells the men gathered that they should wait for Lapia to speak for herself, cynically questioning if anyone would be surprised by this news from Solea. The Duke turns his attention to Sein, stating there's a more pressing matter at hand, and Sein agrees. The men analyze the Emperor Joseph's motives for the war, concluding it's a political move to unify the people, distract from the temple, and a boon for business. The discussion continues, noting the high quality of Western rocks and that if the Emperor succeeds, history will remember him as great. The red-haired man at the table asks if it isn't about time for a decision. Sein grimly thinks to himself that the Emperor must decide on a successor soon. Sein confronts his father, stating that war is a good chance to assess a ruler's competence and that it is time for them to make a clear stance. Declaring that he is different from his father, Sein stares down the Duke, saying he has someone he must protect. A vision of Lapia appears, thinking that she doesn't wish to make unnecessary enemies. The Duke listens to his son in thoughtful silence. Conceding the point, the Duke tells Sein to do as he wishes, noting the princes may differ from their father, Joseph. When asked who he will support, Sein reveals he hasn't decided and must join the war to weigh their abilities himself. Sein announces he has a request, catching the attention of the other men. He asks that Rick, the surprised red-haired man, be assigned as Lapia's escort. Rick insists any knight would be honored, but Sein firmly states that Rick is the only one he can entrust with this task. Sein compliments Rick's unparalleled skill, leaving the knight to silently consider the weight of the request. Sein orders the red-haired man to organize the list of knights for the expedition by midnight, and he accepts the command. Sein then orders his chamberlain, Josh, to prepare to accompany him, leaving the blonde man utterly shocked to be joining a monster subjugation. Sein dismisses Josh's panic by reminding him he knows how to use a sword, but the chamberlain remains flustered. With a cunning smile, Sein questions if Josh is afraid of Solea's forces. Josh insists it's only because he's a chamberlain, but the Duke cuts him off with a definitive "so what?" The Duke smiles proudly at Sein, remarking to someone named Priscilla that her son has grown up. Later, Sein and Lapia sit in a heavy silence in a grand room. In a cute interlude, Lapia glares silently at Sein, who asks why she is looking at him like that. Sein tells Lapia he's just realized how mature she's become. She teases him about his height, but he insists she understands his true meaning. Lapia explains that she works hard to keep up, since he always exceeds expectations. Beaming with confidence, Lapia tells Sein she believes he'll do well without her because he's so capable. Her words leave Lapia looking confused and concerned. She asks what he means by "without me," questioning if he's leaving again for the salt negotiations, but Sein hesitates to answer. Lapia realizes his departure is connected to the Imperial envoys, and Sein grimly admits it might be for years. She recalls the news of the Western monster subjugation and worries for the Duke's health, given his age and old shoulder injury. With tears welling in her eyes, Lapia asks if the sudden campaign isn't too dangerous. Sein tries to reassure her, claiming his role is just a formality to support the princes from behind. Lapia sees the sad truth in his eyes, realizing the decision to participate has already been made. Sein confirms her fears with a simple yes, and Lapia looks down with a pained expression. Looking up with determined, tear-filled eyes, Lapia tells him he needs to be careful. With a resolute expression, Sein clenches his fist and tells her he has something to give her. He places an ornate box on the table, telling her to see for herself, as she hesitantly asks if it's for her. Lapia is overcome with emotion as she holds the precious gift. Opening the box, she discovers it's Lord Sein's personal quill pen, his mother's only keepsake, which he asks her to maintain while he's gone. Looking away, Sein entrusts the keepsake to her, asking her to keep it safe for him. Sein advises her to use and clean the quill regularly so the ink doesn't harden. Beaming with joy, Lapia happily accepts the responsibility, telling him to leave it to her. Lapia then asks if she can use it to write letters, and Sein thoughtfully repeats the word letters. Thinking she's overstepped, a flustered Lapia asks if using it to write is not allowed. Lapia's face lights up with sheer delight. Sein clarifies that a messenger named Peppo will visit regularly so she can send her letters with them. He playfully teases her to write clearly, and she retorts with a pout that her writing isn't that bad. Lapia laments that her probation, which Sein admits is a pretext, will prevent her from seeing him off. Already feeling lonely at the thought of his absence, Sein reassures her that Rick will stay by her side, but Lapia is confused, pointing out that Rick is his aide. He instructs her to keep Rick close, even if the night seems scary or uncomfortable. Sein firmly declares that Rick is the only one who can protect her while he is away. Lapia reaches out and gently takes Sein's hand. As their hands intertwine, he quietly asks what she is doing. She looks up at him with a gentle smile, and he promises he'll be back soon. Their clasped hands are framed by blooming pink roses, symbolizing their tender moment. The scene shifts as Sein, flanked by his men, leads a massive army of knights from the duchy. Two of his lieutenants stride forward, their purpose clear. Clad in a magnificent purple cape, Sein's expression is one of grim and unwavering resolve. From a window high above, Lapia watches the vast procession of soldiers depart. She presses her hand to the cold glass, whispering Lord Sein's name with a heavy heart. A close-up reveals the sadness and worry lingering in her determined red eyes. Clutching a sprig of white berries, she makes a silent prayer for his safe return. Time passes as the ducal mansion is bathed in the warm colors of a setting sun. In her room, Lapia gently touches the ornate quill, wondering where Lord Sein is now. She reflects that 10 days have passed since his departure and figures he must be heading west by now. Letting out a soft, phew, she sits back in her chair, lost in thought. Lapia feels relieved knowing she can hear from Sein through a communication device, recalling that he was assigned to a rear support unit, which is much safer than the front lines where the princes are. She holds the quill pensively, wondering when would be a good time to send a letter, worrying he's too busy. With a frustrated groan, she wrestles with her indecision. Bam! She springs to her feet, filled with new resolve and declaring that this is no time to be idle. She needs to get ready too. Lapia sits with the Duke, asking if Sein mentioned her before leaving, but her father-in-law calmly replies that he said nothing. The Duke asks how long she plans to remain in confinement, and Lapia brightly replies that she wanted to speak to him about that very topic. She declares it's time to end her confinement and that she needs his help with something first, a proposal he is glad to hear. When the Duke asks what she needs, Lapia begins to divulge a secret that only she, Lord Sein, and a woman named Margaret know. With a startlingly cheerful smile, Lapia calmly informs the Duke she will collapse soon and just wanted to warn him so he wouldn't be surprised, leaving him utterly baffled. She explains she will soon come down with a mysterious fever, but reassures him that it's nothing serious and he shouldn't worry. The Duke, now in a panic, asks frantically if he should call a doctor or a priest. Lapia urges him not to call anyone, clarifying that she will only appear sick without feeling any pain, and that it is crucial no one else knows she has collapsed. The Duke's eye twitches as he struggles to comprehend what she is saying. He lets out an exasperated sigh, burying his face in his hand. The Duke tells her she'll need a much more convincing explanation, and she falls silent. After a moment, Lapia quietly agrees with a simple yes. Looking him in the eye with renewed determination, she promises to tell him everything. An intense, silent moment hangs in the air as the Duke and Lapia sit across from each other. Lapia waits nervously as the silence stretches on. The Duke listens intently to her unspoken words, his expression one of deep contemplation. The silence is punctuated only by the stillness of the teacup on the table. The Duke finally speaks, apologizing for not being told sooner, while Lapia reassures him that it's all right. He touches his temple, a flicker of recognition in his eyes as he vaguely remembers hearing the name Grenier a long time ago. Lapia calls out to her father, getting his full attention as he processes her shocking revelation. Lapia admits her existence might be a threat to the Duchy of Solea, but still pleads for the Duke's help. The Duke firmly declares that Lapia is one of the House of Solea, leaving her stunned and emotional. The Duke gazes into the distance with a look of unwavering conviction. Touched, Lapia calls him father, and he replies that it's only natural for him to protect her. Lapia beams, thanking him profusely, while the Duke promises to investigate the person named Yuri as well. Lapia asks if she may request one more favor, and the Duke calmly tells her to go ahead. She reveals her plan. After collapsing and recovering, she intends to step into the public eye. With resolve, Lapia declares her wish to be known as the daughter of Count Estaranta. She acknowledges her fear of Yuri, but vows that running away is no longer an option. Clutching her chest, Lapia earnestly tells the Duke that she wants to grow stronger. A pleased smile crosses the Duke's face as he commends her fine ambition. The Duke informs Lapia that the Estaranta assets are under his custody, and he will transfer them to her name to manage. With a confident look, he promises to have all the paperwork completed before she wakes up. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Lapia tearfully thanks her father-in-law. Under the full moon, the Duke's voice echoes his profound belief in Lapia. Outside, maids gossip that with the young Duke away, there is no one to defend the Duchess from her extended confinement. Two maids fret over the Duchess's confinement, resolving to hold on a little longer. The head maid, Margaret, unlocks the door to Lapia's chambers with a clank. Margaret pauses at the door, her expression filled with somber concern. Her head whips around as a sudden noise or realization startles her. Margaret bursts into the Duke's study, calling his name urgently. With a panicked expression, Margaret reports that the young lady has collapsed. The Duke remains calm, recognizing that the plan has begun. Margaret questions not calling a doctor, but the Duke reaffirms Lapia's instructions to refuse medical attention. As he writes, the Duke orders that the twins be kept ignorant and that Margaret must not leave Lapia's side. The Duke tells Margaret he will check on Lapia himself and dismisses her, to which she replies, "Understood." A stern-looking messenger eagle announces its intent to inform him of the news. Lapia finds herself in a surreal, dreamlike space, standing barefoot in glowing, ethereal water. In her subconscious, Lapia wonders why the gate that appeared in her past life won't manifest now. She looks down sadly, thinking that everyone must be worried about her. Splash! She cries out in surprise as she loses her footing and falls into the glowing depths. Floating helplessly, she laments that she can't find the gate and is now falling endlessly. Annoyed, she rights herself, determined to find what she tripped on. Her eyes widen in sudden, wide-eyed shock. She looks down at the glowing water, confused, wondering why there's nothing there. Back in her bed, Lapia is puzzled, realizing that despite the crash, she is neither hurt nor wet. In the dreamscape, she kneels and probes the water, convinced something must be there. Her fingers touch something solid beneath the surface, and she realizes she was right. A massive pillar of light erupts from the water as she cries out, "Ah!" Overwhelmed by the blinding light, Lapia wonders what has been happening to her lately. She stares in wide-eyed disbelief at the unfolding spectacle. She is suspended within a brilliant golden light filled with motionless gears. Floating in the strange space, she wonders why none of the gears are moving. She thoughtfully ponders the meaning behind the stalled mechanism. Within the abstract space, she realizes the motionless gears must mean one part is broken. A gasp of realization hits her. Her hand reaches out toward the glowing golden clockwork. She struggles to place the missing piece, finding it more difficult than she expected. Click. She successfully inserts the piece, exclaiming, "Got it." A jolt throws her backward as the ancient mechanism whirs back to life. Lost in thought, Lapia listens silently, her expression somber. Surrounded by a golden aura, she realizes with a shudder that her previous path has completely stopped. With a newfound sly smile, Lapia decides she will fix all her problems, one by one. Suddenly, she is startled as a strange phenomenon appears before her. Malevolent, dark red energy coalesces in the air, revealing itself as the Gate of Word Spirit. Lapia looks on with concern, sensing that something about this development feels very strange. She recalls her previous life as a hooded figure and compares it to her childhood at the start of her return. Facing a set of pristine white doors, she understands that this time, everything is the complete opposite of before. She stares in shock as the white doors are now splattered with what appears to be blood. Golden energy swirls around Lapia as she is enveloped in a powerful light. Looking up with tears in her eyes, she is overwhelmed by the radiant light washing over her. A mysterious voice calls out her name, Lapia, from within the light. Confident that she will succeed this time, Lapia agrees with the voice's encouragement. The magical energy intensifies into a brilliant, abstract glow. Holding a glowing orb of light, Lapia wonders about the mysterious voice she is hearing. As the voice commands her to open her eyes, she looks up in wide-eyed surprise. The voice tells her that everyone is waiting for her gaze filled with determination. The scene shifts to a peaceful night, focusing on an ornate canopy bed under a full moon. A gloved hand gently caresses Lapia's hair as a man's voice whispers her name. She murmurs softly in her sleep, a faint blush on her cheeks. The visitor is revealed to be a man with dark hair, dressed in a formal military uniform. The man gently urges the sleeping, blushing Lapia to open her eyes. The scene pulls back, showing Lapia's grand and beautifully furnished bedroom at night. Lapia continues to sleep peacefully, bathed in the soft light of her room. A romantic portrait shows the dark-haired man and a beautifully adorned Lapia holding hands. A bright new day begins at the magnificent estate. A maid with reddish-brown hair expresses her relief that Lapia's fever is gone, but is startled by a sound from the bed. Stretching energetically, Lapia wakes up and cheerfully calls for her maid, Margaret. With a radiant smile, Lapia wishes a good morning to her maid. Margaret asks how she's feeling, and Lapia, sipping a drink, declares she's never felt more refreshed. Curious, Lapia asks Margaret how many days she was unconscious after her collapse. Learning it was 15 days, Lapia thanks Margaret for her care, and her newfound maturity moves the maid. Lapia smiles with quiet contentment as she holds her teacup. Her peaceful expression shifts to one of surprise as she recalls a memory of the man in the uniform. She turns to Margaret, asking if anyone visited her the previous night. Margaret looks confused, insisting that no one came and that she stayed by Lapia's side all night. The maid recalls stepping out for 15 minutes, but notes Sir Rick was guarding the hall, preventing any visitors. Concerned by the question, Margaret asks if something happened, but Lapia quickly brushes it off. With a slight blush, Lapia dismisses her memory, concluding that it must have been a dream. Privately, she wonders about the voice and if her high fever caused a hallucination, doubting someone would visit for only 15 minutes. A brief flashback shows the man from her dream thinking her doubts don't make sense. Still troubled, Lapia thinks to herself that even if it was a dream, it felt incredibly real. Bang! The door bursts open, startling both Lapia and Margaret. A man with reddish-purple hair and a stern expression strides into the room, alarming the two women. The man is revealed to be her father, the Duke, who asks if she's all right. A flustered Lapia asks why he's here so suddenly. The Duke explains he rushed over upon hearing she awoke and apologizes for startling her, while Lapia apologizes for making him worry. He thanks her for granting his request and then asks if her probation can now be lifted. The Duke announces he has resolved the prestigious title issue and grants her the freedom to do as she pleases. Overjoyed by the news, Lapia breaks into a brilliant, happy smile. Her father looks away with a slight blush, modestly claiming that resolving the issue wasn't difficult. Recovering in bed, Lapia asks her father-in-law about the salt distribution negotiations Sein was working on. She boldly asks to take over the negotiations herself, surprising the Duke. With an earnest smile, Lapia adds that she will only proceed with his permission. The Duke looks on skeptically as she asks if it would be all right. As Lapia waits anxiously, the Duke inwardly acknowledges how much she has grown. A pleased smile crosses the Duke's face as he agrees to let her handle it. The scene shifts to Rick, the red-haired knight, working alone in his office. Hearing a knock, he calmly tells the visitor to come in. Rick looks up from his work, startled by the person at his door. Lapia greets Sir Rick, asking for a moment of his time, and he invites her to have a seat. Rick notes that she seems to have recovered, and Lapia thanks him for watching over her during her illness. He demurs, stating he was simply fulfilling his duty. Lapia counters that her duty is to serve Lord Sein, leaving Rick momentarily confused. She explains that they both serve the same master and share a common goal in caring for Lord Sein. Lapia sincerely asks if they can get along better from now on. With a brilliant smile, she extends her hand, vowing not to be afraid of him any longer. Rick stares at her outstretched hand. Taken aback by her gesture, he hesitantly takes her hand, promising to do his best as well. A cute cartoon shows Lapia and Rick sealing their new understanding with a fist bump. Leaning in conspiratorially, Lapia suggests an activity for them to bond over. She enthusiastically proposes a hike, leaving Rick looking utterly bewildered by the suggestion. The scene changes to a bright, sunny day. Sunbeams illuminate a rugged, majestic mountain range. Gasp and exhausted Lapia pants heavily, struggling with the difficult climb. Rick looks back with concern as she lags behind. He offers to carry her on his back as she bends over, trying to catch her breath. Waving a shaky hand, Lapia insists she's fine, though her face tells a different story. Rick looks unconvinced, pleading with her to reconsider his offer. He explains that Knight's training involves carrying far heavier loads than her. Since her stamina isn't fully restored, he argues that carrying her is the most efficient way to the top. Lapia gently refuses, explaining that her goal isn't simply reaching the peak. She proposes they rest and look around. Rick agrees, offering her a canteen of water. While resting, Rick comments on her wearing the young Duke's clothes, and she explains she had no time for a tailor. She asks where they are, and Rick informs her they have passed the mountain's midpoint. Discouraged by how far they still have to go, Lapia politely declines Rick's renewed offer to carry her. She worries that if the climb is this difficult, she might fail to find what she's looking for. Her eyes fly open as she is startled by something. She stumbles, her foot striking a strange crystalline rock. Picking it up, she stares at the peculiar rock with dawning realization. Crack. She breaks the rock's outer shell, revealing its true nature. Her hand now holds a large chunk of a clear, mineral-like substance. Rick approaches, asking what she has found. To test her theory, Lapia licks the rock, horrifying Rick, who begs her not to eat strange things. While Rick panics that she'll get sick, Lapia calmly tells him not to worry. She beams with a triumphant, happy smile, holding her discovery. A baffled Rick wonders aloud if what she found is rock salt. Lapia confirms it is, declaring they must now search for a nearby cave together. Rick helps Lapia as they carefully search along a steep, rocky cliffside. A final view captures the vast and rugged mountain landscape where their search continues. Lapia and the red-haired knight, Rick, stand together on a rugged, sunlit mountainside. Suddenly, both Lapia and Rick look up, startled and surprised by something they've discovered. They stand before a cave entrance as a torch flares to life, illuminating the path into the darkness. Holding the torch aloft, Rick leads Lapia as they venture cautiously into the mysterious cave. Inside the glittering cave, Lapia remarks that even just from the entrance, the amount of rock salt seems significant. Rick marvels that this is all rock salt, something he's only read about, while Lapia admits it's her first time seeing the real thing, too. Rick scolds Lapia for tasting the rock, begging her never to do that again, and she sheepishly apologizes. Looking serious, Rick suggests they head back down before it gets darker. Clutching a piece of rock salt, Lapia happily exclaims that she wants to show it to her father-in-law right away. Rick smiles warmly, agreeing to her wish with a respectful, "Understood, my lady." Back in his study, the Duke examines the rock salt, realizing why Lapia asked about the contract and lamenting that he never considered finding it in his own territory, even knowing it was once a sea. Looking down with regret, the Duke admits to himself that he has been too careless. Lost in thought, the Duke adjusts the collar of his ornate high-necked attire. The Duke's sharp golden eyes meet hers as he asks how she figured it all out. Lapia beams, a bright and cheerful expression on her face as she prepares to share her story. She explains that she connected the dots. The knight's blades dulled frequently, their water came from Mount Kales, so she went with Sir Rick to investigate the source. The Duke thoughtfully laments that he should have paid more attention to the knight's casual comments. Turning to the knight, the Duke apologizes to Rick, who becomes flustered and insists it's fine, while Lapia smiles beside him. Leaning forward with a proud smile, the Duke commends Lapia, telling her she did well. Lapia glows with happiness, asking if her discovery will truly help the people of the territory. With a gentle and proud expression, the Duke assures her that it will help more than enough. An announcement confirms their success. 6 salt caves were discovered in Mount Kales. Tap tap. A finger points to a map, indicating the locations of the newly found salt caves. At a meeting with Lapia and Rick, the Duke declares that at this rate, rock salt could become Solea's main export. The Duke turns to Lapia for her thoughts, and she proposes they commercialize the rock salt even more. Lapia outlines her business plan: use pure white salt for consumption and find other uses for the colored varieties. She suggests using colored salt for bath salts popular with nobles, or processing it into ornaments. The Duke agrees it's a good idea. The Duke declares that with their own salt supply, they can finally resolve troubles with merchant guilds, giving Lapia full authority over the negotiations. He also tasks Lapia with scouting new merchant guilds for distribution, to which she happily agrees. Lapia glances at a man sitting beside the Duke and asks who he is, prompting the Duke to realize he forgot to make introductions. The Duke explains he thought she'd be overwhelmed handling everything alone and has selected an aide to assist her. A man with grayish-purple hair and glasses stands, introducing himself as Tom, who serves under Sir Josh. Tom smiles, sincerely pledging to do his utmost to support Lapia. A close-up shows Tom's confident and reassuring smile. Lapia cheerfully welcomes Tom, saying she looks forward to working with him, and he politely echoes her sentiment. The Duke ends the meeting, encouraging them to do their best, and they both agree. As Tom opens the door to leave, Lapia asks if she may request a favor, and he kindly invites her to ask. She asks which merchant guild the young lord was negotiating with for salt, and Tom replies that it was the Borzo Guild. Lapia decisively orders Tom to terminate the negotiations with the Borzo Guild and begin searching for a new partner, which he dutifully notes. When Tom asks for conditions, Lapia thoughtfully states her ideal partner would be the largest or one of the oldest guilds in the Kofan Empire. Tom cautions that recruiting established guilds can be difficult and time-consuming, prompting Lapia to ask if her request is too hard. Tom beams, reassuring her that while it's their tendency, it's not impossible, and he will do his best to find a suitable guild. Hearing his confident promise, Lapia breaks into a radiant, joyful smile. A letter to Sein begins, with the writer expressing her worry that his journey might be difficult. The letter continues, describing how she woke from a long dream and felt as if she heard his voice, almost wondering if he'd really visited. She dismisses the thought as impossible, considering the great distance between the estate and the Western Road. The letter excitedly shares news of her amazing salt discovery and assures him the trade is going smoothly, promising not to disappoint him. The perspective shifts to someone marveling at the enormous size of their office, thinking it could fit 50 of them. The letter concludes with the hope that the good news will ease his worries, as a hand gracefully pens the final words. As a bird soars across the night sky, the letter concludes with a promise to write again soon. Lapia stands on a moonlit balcony, looking out into the night as her name is called. In a sunlit office, Tom reports to Lapia that the rock salt mining operation is going smoothly and should pick up speed soon. Tom then brings up the matter of the merchant guild that Lapia had previously selected from his list. He asks about the Orientals Guild, and after seeing Lapia's bright smile, he happily reports that their response has been very active. Tom confirms the Orientals Guild will be visiting Solea directly, prompting a determined Lapia to prepare for their arrival. Noticing the time, Tom apologizes for keeping Lapia so late and suggests they have dinner, admitting he didn't realize the hour while she was at the window. A new arrival, Chagan Orientals, Junior Baron, introduces himself as Lapia, now with braided hair, gives a polite curtsy. The brown-haired Baron explains that he is currently managing the small merchant guild he inherited from his father. Lapia shakes his hand, complimenting his modesty, and Chagan thanks her for the kind words. With a thoughtful expression, Chagan leans forward to begin asking a question. He asks if anyone else will be joining them, looking puzzled when Lapia seems surprised by the question. Chagan clarifies that he is the one in charge of the business. Lapia, thinking he was just a young figurehead, asks if she might pose a personal question. After he agrees, Lapia asks at what age he started in the merchant business, and he replies that he began at 14. He ponders if 14 is considered an early start, concluding that it isn't really, since some begin as young as 10. Chagan apologizes, admitting he thought she was even younger, but Lapia laughs it off, saying she hears that often. Getting down to business, Chagan gestures to the large piece of pink salt, identifying it as the rock salt from Solea. After reviewing the proposal, Chagan acknowledges the salt's potential, but requests time to discuss it with his guild executives. Lapia asks if there's something unsatisfactory, but he assures her that's not the case. Speaking honestly, Chagan explains that his father taught him that trust is more valuable than profit. He explains that moving away from their current partner is difficult due to a long-standing relationship started by his grandfather. Lapia asks if his evaluation is positive, and he smiles, admitting that her offer is very tempting. Lapia understands his predicament, but presses that time is short, and a swift negotiation will make a better impression. She formally addresses Lord Chagan Orientals, and he invites her to continue. He listens intently, referring to her as my lady. Looking at him with captivating intensity, Lapia asks for his honest thoughts, and whether her proposal truly tempts him. The scene shifts to a woman in a red dress, who wonders why Yuri remains silent now that she's a success in the salt business. She reflects that despite many people approaching her, Yuri has not been one of them. Lost in thought, she clenches her fist, pondering what her rival Yuri could be plotting. Elsewhere, a man explains to her that Yuri has suddenly become spiritual and left for a monastery to rest without any notice. The man says he was surprised, but let the free-spirited Yuri go. The woman in red wishes her a good rest. The woman in red apologizes for taking his time, but he insists he enjoyed their conversation. As she departs, she tells Viscount Deckers she also enjoyed their talk, and sees he has business with her father. Walking away, she finds Yuri's actions strange. Realizing she must know that someone named Audrey has failed, the scene returns to a happy Lapia, who smiles while holding a letter amidst a field of flowers. Startled, Lapia turns as a man's voice greets her as Lady Estarante. An older gentleman with a mustache smiles warmly, identifying himself as Viscount Deckers. The Viscount apologizes for not visiting sooner, explaining he's usually in the capital, but Lapia graciously accepts. She dismisses his apology, understanding he must be busy, and then inquires about the Viscountess's trip to the capital. The scene transitions to Lapia's study, where she is diligently writing a letter. She pauses, worrying that her letters might be a bother to the very busy Lord Sein. She decides she must ask, concerned her frequent letters are making him uncomfortable. As feathers drift past, she wonders if she should write to him less often. A moment later, the Duke approaches with a letter, telling a stunned Lapia that this one is for her. Her heart flutters as she looks down at the unexpected letter in her hands. Outside, Rick wonders aloud if a reply will even arrive, but Lapia cheerfully calls out his name. She tells Rick she sends her letters as handwriting practice, not expecting a reply, prompting him to ask if she isn't disappointed. Lapia simply laughs, confessing that she honestly doesn't expect a reply from him. A field of blooming flowers serves as a backdrop for Lapia's thoughts of Lord Sein. Surrounded by flowers, Lapia smiles serenely, convinced that Lord Sein is reading all of her letters. She turns to Rick for validation, but the red-haired man can only offer a hesitant "well" in response. After a moment's thought, Rick concedes that, considering how the young lord treats her, a reply might actually arrive. The scene shifts as Lapia speaks with grave intensity, stressing that what she's about to say is a secret that must be kept between only the two of them. A flustered Chicken Orantals nervously stammers his agreement to keep her confidence. Returning to a brighter moment, Lapia cheerfully sends off a letter with her large hawk, Peppo, telling him she's counting on him again. The scene flashes back to the negotiation, where Chegan states his condition. The Orantals Guild must get exclusive rights to the rock salt business. Lapia beams, immediately agreeing to his terms and promising to have the contract prepared. Chegan expresses his delight with their new partnership, promising she won't regret it, and Lapia says she looks forward to their work together. After agreeing to work together, Chegan asks for a personal favor, which Lapia grants, all while thinking he still hasn't realized something crucial. In a flashback of their tense negotiation, Lapia asks if just 3 days would be acceptable, but Chegan counters that won't do. Lapia's inner monologue recalls her ultimatum. His lack of enthusiasm forced her to consider more productive firms that showed genuine interest. Her pressure tactic works, as a defeated Chegan finally agrees to sign the contract. Just as he concedes, Lapia surprises him by asking to revise the terms, leaving him utterly confused. Chegan asks in disbelief if she's proposing a 70-30 split, to which Lapia only offers a sly, knowing smile. The shocking proposal makes Chegan clutch his head in dismay. Still reeling, Chegan asks her to repeat her terms, unable to believe what he heard. Lapia playfully denies saying anything and blames his long journey for his exhaustion. A flustered Chegan agrees and prepares to leave, promising to be in touch. She stops him, coolly stating there's no need for him to contact her, much to his confusion. Stunned, Chegan listens as Lapia politely dismisses him, stating that while she prefers his company, there are other firms and she wishes him well. A desperate Chegan insists he hasn't declined, only asks for time, but Lapia cuts him off, reminding him that in business, time is as valuable as trust. With a serene and powerful aura, Lapia calmly states that she wants to hear his honest thoughts. Her eyes open, boring into him with an intense, captivating gaze as she asks if he is truly tempted by her proposal. Completely overwhelmed, Chegan admits that he is very tempted by the business's extremely high potential. Lapia presses further, asking why he hesitated, and he shamefully confesses he was trying to gain the upper hand. Understanding his strategy completely, Lapia realizes she can push the negotiation even harder. The scene transitions to a bright, peaceful day at the magnificent estate. Inside, 2 maids attend to Lapia's hair, remarking that she has finally come of age. As a maid adjusts her bow, she comments on Lapia's newfound maturity, prompting Lapia to ask if it's really true. Now beautifully dressed, Lapia glows with a happy and confident smile. A maid with glasses insists Lapia is a refined young lady and declares that Lord Sein will be shocked when he sees her. Lapia thanks her maids, admitting that their effusive praise is a bit embarrassing. She smiles gently, lost in fond thoughts of the person she's getting ready for. The maids worry amongst themselves, wondering when he will return and hoping for his good health. The twin maids share a moment of unified, chibi-style determination. One of the maids confidently tells a concerned Lapia not to worry about his well-being. She proudly boasts that the men of the Solea family are legendarily strong, illustrated by a comical image of a muscular family crest that startles Lapia. Addressing her maids as Nep and Nettie, Lapia says it's time to wrap up because her father is waiting, and they eagerly obey. Elsewhere, the Duke sips his tea, quietly noting that 5 long years have passed since the subjugation battle started. He turns his attention to his daughter, calling her name. At his words, Lapia gasps, struck by a sudden and important realization. She muses that a certain event must happen this year, as it has already been postponed for 3 years. The Duke begins to broach the sensitive topic on both their minds. Lapia's innocent request for her father to be her partner makes him spit his tea everywhere in shock. Flustered, the Duke asks if she wouldn't rather be escorted by a young man her age than an old man like him. She insists she would still prefer him over someone from another family. The Duke shrewdly calls her a flatterer, noting her obvious dislike for anyone but him, and wryly calling himself her next best option. With her hands in her lap, Lapia admits that she can't fool her father. She offers a gentle, knowing smile, surrounded by a frame of soft pink roses. The scene shifts to a military encampment at a place called the Western Outpost, bathed in the orange glow of a setting sun. In a tense meeting, a brown-haired man in uniform shouts in frustration that their current plan has already failed. Holding up a map, he angrily points out that the terrain has changed and questions if the others can't even read it. The argument escalates as 2 men clash over the map, while 2 others and a small, blue-haired man watch silently. A man with dark purple hair and golden eyes, the apparent leader, remains stoic and unimpressed by the commotion. His light brown-haired aide smiles nervously, internally begging the young lord to please hide his obvious boredom. Tap, a long-haired man in a grand uniform, smirks, declaring the meeting over and thanking everyone for their work before taking his leave. The dark purple-haired man walks out without a word, leaving the remaining officers silent and confused. The long-haired man remarks that his departure was fast, while the aide watches in monochrome shock. The aide tears up in distress, overwhelmed by his lord's abrupt behavior. The aide confronts the young lord, pleading with him to stop acting so half-heartedly, but the man coolly replies he listens and remembers everything. The aide insists the young lord's attitude is the problem, who retorts that his aide would hate his active participation even more. When the aide demands sincerity, the young lord calls him Josh and asks if being stuck in this dusty place for 5 years isn't dedication enough. Glowing with a dark purple aura, he fiercely asks what more sincerity is needed after he held back from a quick subjugation that became a drawn-out war. Crying, Josh thinks to himself that he didn't expect it to last this long either, and wonders why this is his fault. Later, the 2 sit in a quiet room, sighing in mutual exhaustion from the day's tensions. As a bell rings, a soldier outside announces a letter has arrived. Josh wonders about resigning before dismissing the thought. A cheerful messenger arrives with the letter, and Josh invites him in. The young lord's intimidating presence startles the messenger, prompting Josh to intervene and take the letter. Josh advises the young lord to relax his intense gaze, but he nonchalantly replies that his sharp look is natural. Seeing 2 letters, the young lord takes them both, stating they're for him, which Josh acknowledges. Josh points out that his personal letters arrive via Peppo, questioning why he gets his hopes up, but the young lord denies it. Pleading, Josh asks the young lord to be honest for once, but he deflects by asking what about. Josh reveals that the lady hasn't sent a letter in a month, and the young lord gets disappointed every time mail arrives, which he denies. He suggests the young lord write to her first, confident she would be thrilled to receive a letter from him. Josh tells his lord to rest and stop glaring at the knights who bring mail, but the young lord insists he never did that. The young lord runs a hand through his hair, lost in deep, troubled thought. A narrator states that Cassine's patience, which had lasted for over 5 years, has finally reached its limit. It's been 3 weeks since Josh received 2 letters from Tom, as he holds them while Cassine looks on. A blond man asks the young Duke, Cassine, if he has heard the news. Cassine is stunned to learn that Lady Lapia is preparing for her debutante ball. Standing before a map, Cassine informs his officers that there are only 5 days left. A subordinate asks what he means by 5 days, and Cassine begins his explanation. Cassine clenches his fists, reeling in disbelief at the tight timeline. He turns to his shocked subordinates and asks if they have a problem with his plan. Josh looks at Cassine with wide eyes, asking how ending the war so quickly is even possible. Josh despairs, reminding Cassine they've been at war for 5 years, but Cassine counters by asking what if it is possible. A hopeful and curious expression dawns on Josh's face. Cassine reveals he discovered something while chasing a beast to a canyon at the desert's end. Cassine gives Josh a sharp look for going there alone at dawn, but Josh dismisses the danger since nothing happened. On horseback, Cassine recalls that beasts were pouring through a mana stone, though he couldn't confirm if it connected to another dimension. He remembers seeing a massive, glowing red mana stone that was the source of the beasts. A map outlines the new strategy: destroy the mana stone and the remaining beasts to end the war quickly. An officer exclaims they could finish in half a month, as another looks on in awe at the new plan. Cassine guesses that a power struggle between two princes is the reason the war was intentionally dragged out. Josh rallies the men, declaring he's sick of the deadlock and wants them to join him in destroying the mana stone. Cassine smiles with renewed confidence, his hand resting on the hilt of his ornate sword. The military outpost is bathed in an ominous blood-red sky, signaling a coming battle. Over a meal, a man remarks how nice it is that his brother Zeon avoids such places, likely praying in a shrine instead. The displeased-looking man is revealed to be second Prince Noah Kofan. Prince Noah Kofan is surprised when the man with brown hair asks why he doesn't go back as well. The man is identified as the smirking third Prince Dermot Kofan. Dermot suggests asking His Majesty to watch over Noah, enraging him and making him question if Dermot wants to die. Dermot blames Noah's temper for derailing their plans, but Noah retorts that Dermot is always trying to corner him. Dermot coldly suggests that if the accidental child disappears, Noah might regain His Majesty's favor by devoting himself to the Empire. Furious, Noah clenches his teeth, thinking that the low-born bastard Cassine is too clever with his words. The three men, Noah, Dermot, and Cassine, sit together at the tense meal. Taking a sip from his goblet, Cassine calmly reminds the bickering princes that he is also there. Dermot questions why Cassine, a non-royal, is present, then cheekily asks why he'd say something so upsetting. Dermot grandly declares all citizens are royal in spirit, but Cassine dryly suggests he go eat with all of them then. TSK. Annoyed by their fighting, Cassine listens as Dermot changes the subject, asking if he has a fiancée. Dermot needles Cassine about the news, but Noah sighs, thinking his brother is tactless for wanting to hear it directly. Despite his annoyance, Noah admits that he is also honestly curious. Dermot asks Sein to describe his bride, complaining that he couldn't even find a portrait of her. Whoosh. An intense pressure fills the air as Cassine glares at the two princes. Cassine states the timing is perfect, as he has something to announce to both of them. He declares his plan to end the subjugation soon, stunning the two princes. Both Dermot and Noah are shocked, questioning Sir Cassine's sudden declaration. Dermot dismisses the idea, arguing that Cassine is tired, and the war can't be ended on a whim while beasts still emerge. Noah agrees, reminding Cassine they can't return without occupying the West or receiving a royal order. Cassine confirms that occupying the West is the condition for their return, and Noah affirms it's correct. With a flash of determination, Cassine declares that's exactly why he'll end it, leaving Noah utterly baffled. Noah accuses Cassine of trying to take all the credit, but Cassine calmly states his reason. He has a fiancée waiting. Lost in thought, Cassine reflects that he never expected to be separated from her for so long. The scene briefly shifts to a magnificent estate, a symbol of the home he longs to return to. After a moment of silence, Noah quietly murmurs Cassine's name, still processing the news. Noah studies Cassine's face, wryly noting he can't tell if he wants to get married or kill someone. Noah asks if his fiancée ran away, while Dermot speculates that she might have, considering how many years they've been apart. Dermot presses again, wanting to understand Cassine's sudden resolve. Cassine seeks confirmation. If they wipe out the monsters and secure the frontier, the force will be disbanded. Noah confirms this. Cassine reveals his plan: destroy the magic stone in the Western Canyon, which is the source of the monsters. Looking grim, Noah sets the time for the operation, 2 days from now, at noon. Dermot proposes a competition. The monsters will split into two, each prince will lead a subjugation, and whoever kills more gains greater merit. A spark of rivalry ignites between Prince Noah and Prince Dermot. Cassine reminds them that a prolonged war is harmful, and that His Majesty's patience may be wearing thin. A shining crown flashes, a potent symbol of the ultimate prize the princes are fighting for. Cassine tells the princes this is their only opportunity to prove themselves with results, an opportunity he is creating for them. With a hand over his heart, Cassine bows his head, resolute in his decision. As a bright light shines, Cassine tells the princes to remember this moment. Now mounted on his horse, Cassine looks prepared for the coming battle. He rallies his troops, asking if they're ready, and they respond with a powerful yes. A confident smirk graces Cassine's face as he replies, "Good." He gives the order to move out, and the cavalry charges into a canyon under a blood-red sky. The thunderous sound of hooves echoes as the knights gallop into the desolate canyon. The knights charge forward in formation, ready for the impending conflict. Sword drawn, Cassine leads the charge directly into a gruesome horde of monsters. Splat blood flies as the soldiers clash fiercely with the monstrous creatures. A soldier is momentarily stunned amidst the bloody chaos of the battle. Cassine and his cavalry relentlessly cut down monsters from a high vantage point. The knights press onward, charging deeper into the canyon as the fierce battle rages. As the chaotic battle rages, Josh shouts to get the young lord's attention, pointing out their target. Cassine stares up at their objective, the massive crystalline magic stone glowing with malevolent red energy. Leaping from the cliff, Cassine dives towards the stone alone, ordering his men to guard him from above. The magic stone pulses with an ominous crimson light, its raw power radiating outward. Astride his horse, Cassine's expression is one of pure, unwavering determination. FWIP, he launches himself from his steed, diving headfirst into the swirling vortex of red energy. A brilliant flash of energy marks his passage through the chaotic magical field. Mid-air, Cassine draws his sword, his own purple aura flaring as he prepares to strike the stone. Crash! With a mighty swing, his sword smashes into the magic stone's core. Gasp! As the stone cracks, Cassine is suddenly engulfed in a powerful surge of his own dark purple energy. The stone shatters, releasing a blinding purple light that radiates outward with immense force. Kaboom! A colossal explosion of purple magic tears through the canyon, marking the end of the battle. Elsewhere, under a full moon, a white-haired young woman named Lapia reflects that preparing a debutante ball is far more work than she anticipated. Walking through a garden, she muses that because it's for the Solea family, the party's enormous scale has left her to make too many decisions alone. Her mood brightens as she's told that despite a slow start, business sales are increasing daily. Feeling relieved, she walks through the grass and suddenly decides she must write a letter to Lord Sein. Contemplating a beautiful night sky filled with blooming flowers, she wonders how to begin her letter. Her thoughts are abruptly cut short as she gasps, startled by a sudden, unseen presence. Cautiously, she moves through the now eerie woods, drawn toward a mysterious silhouette in the darkness. Startled by the imposing figure, she nervously asks who is there. A heavy footstep sounds as the figure steps forward from the shadows. Her crimson eye widens in utter shock and disbelief. A familiar, intense golden eye gazes back at her. Clutching a pendant at her chest, Lapia stares up in awe at the man who has appeared before her. A soft blush spreads across her cheeks as she recognizes the visitor. In a magical, starlit clearing, Cassine and Lapia stand reunited after years apart. Cassine's gaze is fixed on her, his expression unreadable but intense. "Lord Sein!" she cries out, running toward him with joyous relief. She bombards a bewildered Cassine with a frantic stream of questions about his sudden return and well-being. Grasping his hands, she frets over him, begging him not to tell her he's forgotten her, while he tries to calm her down. A radiant, tearful smile lights up her face, overjoyed by his return. Cassine stares at her, stunned by how she's changed, and stammers, Little Lapia?" She giggles at his shock, asking what's wrong, as he internally struggles with the fact the kiddo he knew is gone. "What's with your bangs?" he asks, startling her into a wide-eyed ah. She asks if the style doesn't suit her, but Cassine turns away, assuring her that's not it. Blushing slightly, he admits her new look is just unfamiliar, but quickly adds that it suits her well. They exchange compliments with Lapia admiring how much he's grown, and Cassine remarking that she's become even cooler. When she asks why he's back, he reveals the war is over, shocking her into asking if he's hurt. He promises her he is without a scratch, and that now he can finally stay by her side for good. A gentle smile touches his lips as Cassine thinks to himself how truly relieved he is. With tears in her eyes, Lapia closes them and confesses how much she missed him. Overwhelmed, Cassine covers his blushing face, prompting a confused Lapia to reassure him that he's not too late. As he composes himself, she playfully asks if this means he can no longer call her kiddo. He quietly confirms this, causing her to let out a surprised, "Huh?" He explains that he can't call her kiddo anymore because she has grown too much, making her blush happily. An awkward, blushing silence hangs between them as they both stammer. Snapping out of her daze, Lapia urges the tired Cassine to come inside, but he first asks what she'll do. Looking at her with profound fondness, Cassine tenderly says, "Let's go in together." Her cheeks flushing, Lapia stares speechlessly as Cassine's gloved hand reaches out to her. His gloved hand gently takes hers, a soft light enveloping them in a moment of tender reconnection. As they walk down a grand hallway, Lapia asks Cassine why he was still awake, and he explains he had paperwork, prompting her to tease that it's stunting his growth. Flustered, Cassine turns away, retorting that she just said he grew too much and stammering that it's not what he meant. Continuing their walk, Lapia informs Lord Sein that she can use her ability now, to which he calmly acknowledges her news. Lapia expresses her relief that he's okay, recalling how sick he looked the last time she saw him. In a hazy memory, Cassine tends to an unconscious Lapia as she begins to question the event. She looks at Cassine with dawning realization, asking if he was the one who came to her when she passed out. Lapia excitedly realizes her memory wasn't a dream and she truly heard his voice, while an embarrassed Cassine clears his throat. She asks if he truly came for just that brief moment. Cassine admits he got worried and felt he had to come, tightening his grip on her hand. Surrounded by an illusion of flowers, Lapia looks down, her red eyes filled with deep emotion. Cassine smiles gently, telling her that her feeling was a good answer. A brief, flustered silence hangs between them as they stand close together. Cassine suddenly scolds her, causing her to flinch and defensively insist she didn't cough up any blood. He looks away, internally thinking that he doesn't do that anymore, and hoping she won't be mad. As they walk away hand in hand, he makes a promise, which she sweetly accepts. Cassine advises her to rest and finish her work tomorrow, and she softly agrees. Lapia stares up in wonder, still processing the reality of his return. Fearing this is all a dream, she asks Cassine if he's going to disappear again. He smiles warmly, promising her not to worry, and that he'll see her first thing in the morning. Lapia's face lights up with a radiant, joyful smile. She gazes at Cassine, her expression full of happiness and affection. With unwavering resolve in his golden eye, Cassine firmly confirms, "Yeah, a promise." Click, a heavy door closes, marking their parting for the night. Cassine stands alone in a vast, quiet hall, contemplating his gloved hand. His heart thumps as he touches the ornate brooch on his cape, reflecting on the evening's emotions. The next morning, Lapia stands proudly before the mansion, asking how she looks. She twirls in a stunning new gown, asking if her elegant attire is too much. Two maids gush that she looks perfect, noting her extra effort for the day. Blushing, Lapia admits to herself that she wants to look good because it's been a while. At a knock on the door, a maid declares it's perfect timing and moves to open it. Cassine waits pensively in the hallway, now dressed in a simple white shirt and black trousers. Click. He turns as the door swings open to reveal Lapia. Lapia beams, happily greeting Lord Sein as she steps out to meet him. Looking at her with a determined expression, Cassine simply says, "Let's go." Walking together, Lapia recognizes his clothes and asks if he's wearing Sir Rick's. He confirms he borrowed them as none of his fit. Lapia promptly decides their first order of business is to get him proper clothes. She suggests visiting the Merchant Guild to buy him fine fabric, mentioning Lord Arontals is there. She then asks if he has seen his father yet, and he replies that he's on his way now. Lapia voices her concern that his father might call him a scoundrel, but Cassine just smirks, admitting his father likely thinks that anyway. As they continue walking down the hall, she softly thanks him. Later, at a dining table with an older man, Lapia wishes her father a good morning. Her father confirms he slept well and asks about her, and she replies that her night was very peaceful. The father then turns his sharp gaze toward the purple-haired man, addressing him as Cassine. Cassine formally responds, "Yes, your grace." While his father silently thinks the word scoundrel at him, Cassine calmly affirms, "Yes." Cassine holds a fork, his golden eyes meeting his father's unwavering stare across the table. Cassine's father relents with an "all right," and Cassine quietly thanks him. His father then announces his intention to pass the title to Cassine soon, stunning him into silence. His father explains that Cain is of age, and it's only sensible for him to receive the title, rank, and power. Lapia looks down, solemnly acknowledging that she will do as his grace wishes. His father reassures a worried Lapia, explaining that he simply thought this was the most natural course of action. Taking a sip of wine, his father admits that he's at an age where he gets tired more easily. The father thinks happily that Cassine's return is a relief, and he'll now be free to take walks and have picnics with Lapia, to which Cassine listens silently. Cassine glares suspiciously, asking if his father is giving him the title just so he can hang out with Lapia. His father cheerfully admits that's partly true, causing a frustrated Cassine to exclaim, "Your Grace." The father advises Cassine to rest for the day, as things will get much busier for him soon. Lapia voices her concern, asking if it isn't too much for him to get so busy right after returning. She suggests he get plenty of rest, but Cassine dismisses her worry, saying it's fine since he was going to receive the title eventually anyway. Cassine holds his wine, thinking that if he hadn't gone on the mission, he would have received the title and, more importantly, her, long ago. Changing the subject, Cassine asks about her debutante ball preparations, startling a flustered Lapia. Cassine apologizes for not telling her about his return sooner, which seems to confuse her. She explains she was so busy preparing for the ball that she barely had a moment to breathe. Continuing, she says rock salt business also piled up, preventing her from writing, but she had wanted to tell him. She concludes that he arrived before she could send her letter, and he gently tells her he understands. He asks how the preparations are going, and Lapia confirms they are almost done. Lapia admits she was struggling to find a debutante partner until her father gladly offered to escort her. Disc. Cassine looks away, insisting it's not a problem, but he is clearly bothered by the news. Cassine's expression hardens with determination, surrounded by an illusion of white roses. A blushing Lapia suddenly realizes that, with Sein back, she has a new option for a partner. Cassine meets her gaze, affirming her unspoken thought. With a quiet, "of course," a radiant smile blossoms on Lapia's face, delighted by his implied offer. She playfully teases him about wanting to hold someone else's hand, causing him to defensively shout, that's not what he meant. He explains he was just worried her father might feel hurt, but she assures him he's not that petty. Cassine asks if anything major happened while he was away. A blonde woman reports that Yuri hasn't appeared, and it's suspiciously quiet, then asks about Audrey Deckers. The report continues, stating Audrey is still at the monastery, but her activities there remain unknown. Cassine internally considers the report, wary that investigating the secretive temple might expose them, and recalls looking into the orphanage he fled from. He concludes his thoughts with the grim fact that the orphanage is no longer operating, as Lapia watches him with a sad expression. With sudden realization, Lapia asks if that's why he left the capital so suddenly before. Cassine explains that every trace of the orphanage was erased, so he stayed away for safety. Lapia asks why he never told her. He says it's because he knew she would worry constantly, leaving her sad but silent. Cassine declares that things are different now and he'll investigate himself, as his father walks past. A happy Lapia agrees. Their meal is interrupted by an attendant with an urgent report for the father, who asks what it is. The attendant begins to announce the arrival of Lord Orantles, causing Lapia to gasp in surprise. Lord Orantles, a man with reddish-brown hair, bursts in calling for "my lady," leaving Lapia stunned. He glances around the dining room, wondering if this has to do with the new identity Lapia mentioned. Lord Orantles turns to Cassine and demands to know who he is, but Cassine retorts that he'd like to ask the same question. Cassine's inner thought bristles with irritation, wondering who this rude man is. Cassine sits with his arms crossed, his gaze cold and unwelcoming. A promotional illustration shows Cassine and Lapia together in a tender pose. The confrontation escalates as Lord Orantles asks, "Who are you?" while Cassine thinks, I should be the one asking that. Cassine's hand clenches into a tight fist at his side, revealing his simmering anger. Lord Orantles demands to know who this man is, wandering an engaged lady's estate, and what his relationship is to her. He continues his interrogation, tapping his fingers impatiently on the table. Cassine's eyes widen as he processes the man's words, his mind latching onto the phrase, "new identity?" Looking between the two men, a distressed Lapia begins to apologize. Lord Orantles bows, apologizing for his hasty entrance and explaining he assumed the young lady was alone for their appointment. Cassine smirks coldly, challenging the man by asking, Since when was I just a guest here? Sein's golden eye narrows as he thinks grimly that discipline completely fell apart while he was away. Sein's father thinks sternly about letting outsiders snoop around, while a worried Lapia stands beside him. A panicked Lapia insists it's a misunderstanding and asks Lord Sein to let her introduce them properly. Turning to the reddish-brown-haired man, Lapia formally addresses him as Lord Orientals. Lapia introduces Sein as the young Duke of Solea to a surprised Lord Orientals, then introduces Orientals as their business partner to Sein. Lord Orientals asks, "So?" and then offers to explain the situation to the young Duke. With a menacing smirk, Sein asks if an explanation is even necessary between Lord Orientals and his fiancée. Lord Orientals panics, claiming poor word choice and that he only wanted to clarify, as Sein inwardly dismisses him as ridiculous. Sein sits with his arms crossed in silent disapproval, ignoring Lapia. Flinching, Lapia thinks of her full name, Lapia Estiranta, and obediently says she understands. Smiling sweetly, Lapia politely asks Lord Orientals to please return the day after tomorrow. A bead of sweat rolls down Lord Orientals' face as he stares in stunned silence. Composing himself with a strained smile, Lord Orientals agrees to her request. Bowing deeply, Lord Orientals apologizes for his rudeness and asks for a chance to make amends in the future. TSK. Sein's father calls for the attendant, Anton. The father dismisses Anton, who bows and exits the room. Thud. The heavy doors close, leaving Sein and Lapia alone. Lapia suggests they talk elsewhere, but Sein coldly demands she explain herself right now. Smirking, Sein says he hasn't heard anything he likes and asks if he misheard her about a new identity. He scolds her, asking if leaving him was all her tiny brain could think of, prompting a panicked Lapia to beg him to calm down and listen. As Lapia hesitantly begins to speak, Sein coldly thinks that he's perfectly calm and orders her to talk. Her thoughts drift to the ornate chandelier as she confesses she feared her existence would become a burden. A soft glow surrounds Lapia as she sits alone at the table, lost in her memories. Sein asks, "What?" As Lapia explains, he was carrying a weight he didn't need to. She continues, admitting she couldn't tell him her worries because it would only burden him more. Lapia confesses she pretended to be strong, revealing her 5 years of anxiety over her failure to find Yuri and her fear of never discovering their identity. A menacing, eye-like sigil flashes as she recalls her fear of living under a constant threat until the day she was caught. Wrapped in fear, she explains that she asked Lord Orientals for a new identity as a last resort in case she had to run away. She clenches her fist, admitting that deep down, she prayed she would never have to use it. Looking at the grand estate, Lapia admits she isn't confident she could live well after leaving, as Sein asks if she really could. She wistfully recalls that every day there felt like a happy dream. Wham! Sein suddenly grabs her wrist, startling her. He commands her to stay by his side and never go anywhere, his intensity catching her by surprise. Sein stands resolute, his arms crossed, a protective aura surrounding him. He tells her to stop her negative thinking, and she quietly apologizes. Tap. As they walk, Lapia nervously gets Lord Sein's attention, and he responds. He turns to her with a questioning look. Lapia trails behind him, shyly reaching for his hand among an illusion of roses. He continues, giving her permission to do whatever she wants with him as her hand finds his. His expression darkens as he forbids only one thing, leaving, causing a flustered Lapia to insist it was a misunderstanding. Lapia gets his attention once more, and he asks what she wants now. She asks why he used her family name earlier, and he replies that he wanted to show her something. With a confident smirk, he explains that only a Solea can call her by that name. A flustered Lapia remarks that he sounded like a villain, but he coolly replies that it's better than looking like a fool. Walking hand in hand, Sein invites her to have tea together. The scene transitions to a peaceful view of leaves against a sunny sky. The camera pans across the magnificent, sunlit exterior of the grand mansion. Outside in the garden, a man with bright orange hair spots them and asks if they're finally here. The orange-haired man explodes in a flushed rage, yelling that they left him behind and it was incredibly mean. The furious orange-haired man, Josh, confronts Sein, yelling about how they were left behind and that it was too much. Sein coolly retorts that he didn't leave just him behind, causing a flustered Josh and his companions to stammer that's not what they meant. Sighing, Sein tells Josh he's overreacting, but Josh shouts back that of course he gets tired of being angry. Josh demands to know why Cassine couldn't have returned with them, while Cassine privately thinks that traveling with the entire group would have been slower. Josh dramatically cries about the difference between 5 years and 5 years plus 15 days, with a graphic comparing 1825 days to 1840. Cassine calmly asks if Josh can't count, stating the difference is obvious, which makes Josh scream in frustration. A woman with light brown hair laughs, saying the two are still the same, then gasps in surprise upon recognizing Lapia. Lapia smiles warmly, greeting Sir Josh and saying she's glad he's well. A charmed Sir Josh remarks that Lapia has become a proper lady, admitting he hadn't noticed how much time had passed until now. Lapia addresses the assembled soldiers, expressing her happiness that everyone returned safe and sound after enduring so much. She continues her speech, thanking the soldiers for raising the pride of the Solea duchy. Cassine smiles, instructing the soldiers to go unpack and get some rest first. Lapia earns a loud "Wow!" from the troops by announcing a feast in their honor and expressing her deepest respect. Watching her, Cassine internally remarks that Lapia has grown into her role as hostess quite well. Cassine smiles to himself, looking forward to the upcoming Debutante Ball in a few days. Lapia stands alone, looking serene and elegant in a moment of quiet contemplation. The scene transitions, showing leaves drifting against a warm, hazy sky, signaling the passage of time. As the sun sets, the magnificent mansion is bathed in a golden glow, ready for the evening's festivities. Guests arrive in carriages at the grand gates of the estate for the highly anticipated ball. The grand ballroom is bustling with elegantly dressed nobles, all mingling before the main event. Tap tap. Now in a beautiful gown, Lapia hears a knock and invites the person to come in. Cassine enters, dressed in a sharp, formal uniform, and informs Lapia that it's time, as many guests have already arrived. With a sharp, determined gaze, Cassine appears ready for the evening ahead. Lapia is revealed in a stunning, ethereal light blue gown, looking radiant for her debut. Beaming with happiness, Lapia smiles brightly, ready for her grand entrance. Struck by her beauty, a blushing Cassine momentarily forgets what to say. Lapia nervously touches Cassine's arm, a small gesture of her anxiety. Looking up at him with worried eyes, Lapia asks what she should do if she makes a mistake. Cassine reassures her that no one will notice if she does, prompting her to ask why not. He tells her it's simply because she's beautiful, leaving a flustered Lapia to gasp in surprise. Clearing his throat, a flustered Cassine quickly changes the subject, telling her just to be careful not to trip. Guests in the ballroom gossip about the banquet, Cassine's recent inheritance of the dukedom, and the evening being a double celebration. An announcer grandly proclaims the joint entrance of Duke Cassine Solea and Lady Lapia Estiranta, the star of the Debutante Ball. The guests watch in anticipation as Cassine and Lapia begin their descent down the grand staircase. Cassine's hand rests gently on Lapia's arm as they prepare to enter the ballroom. Arm in arm, Cassine and Lapia make their grand entrance, descending the stairs surrounded by an illusion of roses. Onlookers, including a man and a woman, watch the couple's descent with keen interest. They walk through the hall, Cassine looking composed, while Lapia appears slightly shy amidst the crowd. Surrounded by guests, a happy Lapia covers her mouth with her hand as she smiles. Cassine and Lapia stand together in the center of the ballroom, poised on a large, golden floral crest on the floor. Cassine formally extends his hand, inviting Lapia for the first dance. Smiling radiantly, Lapia accepts his offer without hesitation. As the music begins, Cassine and Lapia start their first dance together. Their hands meet gracefully as they move in perfect sync with the music. Cassine watches Lapia with a gentle expression as he leads her across the dance floor. The couple twirls gracefully, Lapia's long, silver hair flowing beautifully behind her. Cassine internally panics about their lack of practice, while Lapia has the same thought. He then reassures himself that she's physically gifted anyway. Cassine executes a perfect, elegant dip, showcasing their surprising skill on the dance floor. In a picture-perfect moment, the two dance closely, capturing the romantic atmosphere of the ball. The dance is shown through a collage of their intense gazes, highlighting the deep connection between them. The scene transitions to the ornate, sun-kissed architecture of a grand cathedral or ballroom. In a picture-perfect moment, Cassine and Lapia hold each other close, captured in the romance of their first dance. A blush creeps across Cassine's face as his heart pounds, lost in the moment with her. Looking up at him, a blushing Lapia feels her own heart race, as they hold each other's gaze. Biwoom, a sudden, loud noise shatters the romantic atmosphere, causing Sein to look irritated and a startled Lapia to wonder what's happening. The guests murmur in confusion, with one woman questioning if the sound heralds a royal procession. Tap. A finely dressed man walks forward as a guest remarks on the grandeur of the celebration for the House of Solea. A man with silver hair watches Sein and Lapia from afar, thinking with some annoyance about not being invited to the event. The silver-haired man, flanked by two companions, voices his disappointment at not having received an invitation. Tap tap. The uninvited man confidently strides into the ballroom. Sein turns to face the newcomers, a stern and unwelcoming expression on his face. The silver-haired man casually dismisses the formal greetings of Sein's companions, telling them to relax. The man observes how much Sein's companions have grown, and one replies that it's been years and they've matured just like Lord Sein. The silver-haired man directly addresses a frowning Sein, acknowledging the news of his inheritance of the dukedom of Solea. Sein offers a tight-lipped thank you in response to the man's congratulations. Turning to Lapia, Sein asks if this is her first time meeting them, and upon her confirmation, he offers to make the introductions. Sein introduces the royal guests, first Prince Xian, second Prince Noah, and third Prince Dermot. Sein thanks the princes and pointedly asks what brings them to his estate. Prince Dermot smirks, questioning why Sein is hosting such a lavish party when the former Duchess never received one. Sein explains that his daughter-in-law is making her debut, so as her father-in-law he prepared a small celebration. The guests whisper amongst themselves, realizing the beautiful woman is the new Duke's fiancée. Prince Dermot asks if she is the young lady of Count Estaranta, and Lapia gracefully confirms her name. Prince Dermot internally remarks on her beauty, recalling how Sein's previous silence about his fiancée made them all very curious. Prince Xian finds the situation amusing, laughing with his brothers and remarking that he now understands why Duke Sein was so secretive. Sein impatiently cuts to the chase, asking why the princes have come to his rural estate, while one explains the emperor was pleased with their recent military success. Second Prince Noah crosses his arms, annoyed, thinking to himself that everyone is just talking nonsense. Sein reveals the emperor wishes to host a victory celebration. As he begins to refuse, Prince Noah interrupts, urging him to at least consider it. Prince Xian gently chides Noah, saying it's a difficult decision, while Dermot notes Sein's blunt manner of speaking, causing Xian to sigh. Prince Xian maintains a pleasant, smiling expression despite the tension. Prince Xian smoothly changes the subject, suggesting they enjoy the party for now and talk business later. With a welcoming gesture, Prince Xian diffuses the tense conversation. Lapia stands by, quietly wondering what just happened between Sein and the princes. The scene transitions to the quiet of the evening, with petals drifting across the moonlit sky. The grand mansion is shown in the peaceful stillness of the night. Lapia stands alone on a balcony, taking a moment of quiet reflection away from the party. Exhaling, Lapia feels exhausted, thinking of how many dance requests she's already had to politely decline. She reflects that socializing with so many people is the most draining work of all. Startled, she turns to find Prince Xian approaching, who asks if he disturbed her rest. Lapia assures him it's all right, and he invites her to get some fresh air with him. Prince Xian asks why she held her debutante ball so far from the capital, noting she never visits, which leaves Lapia momentarily speechless. Lapia offers a polite, slightly reserved smile as she considers her answer. She explains that she's been sickly since childhood, and Prince Xian kindly replies that he understands the feeling. Prince Xian laughs, admitting that he was also frail as a child. He explains that his poor health is why he was unable to participate in military campaigns alongside his brothers. He reveals that all he could do was pray at the temple for the safety of his brothers and their knights. Flexing playfully, Xian says he's getting healthier thanks to Dermot's medicine, prompting Lapia to note their close bond. As Xian mentions he used to visit the duchy, Lapia realizes that the third prince was an occasional guest at Solea. Xian fondly recalls being a guest of the former duchess when she was alive, a fact that clearly surprises Lapia. He chuckles, remembering that even then, a young Sein was unfriendly and preferred to play alone in the study. The third prince, Dermot, recalls his household struggling to find him back then, and laughs, admitting he feels sorry about that. Prince Xian finds the idea of hide-and-seek amusing, while Prince Dermot mentions the fun to be had much to Cassine's visible annoyance. Startled, Lapia turns and thinks of Cassine as he steps forward. Cassine proudly tells the princes that he gained most of his knowledge from the very library they stand near. Prince Dermot smirks, thinking about the library's rare books that surpass even the Imperial collection. Cassine glares, curtly asking the princes if they are finished with their conversation. As Cassine leads Lapia away, Prince Dermot wonders why the Duke follows him so closely. Cassine tells him to go rest with his brother. Cassine asks how the princes can be so different, and Dermot cheekily suggests it's because they have different mothers. Prince Zeon smoothly ends the conversation, and Dermot agrees it's time for prayer, diffusing the tension. As they walk away, Cassine remarks that Prince Zeon is too devout for his own good. Back on the balcony, Cassine checks on Lapia, who reassures him that she's all right thanks to his presence. Cassine seriously requests a brief talk in his room later about an important matter, and Lapia readily agrees. As Cassine suggests they go inside, a hesitant Lapia calls his name, stopping him. Looking a bit shy, Lapia asks if she can pose a somewhat forward question. Cassine turns to her, patiently asking what it is she wants to know. The two stand facing each other by the window in a moment of quiet anticipation. Cassine's expression is focused as he awaits her question.